Let's see if we're live and everything's working. Seems like all of this is good. All right. Yes, it would appear so. All right. Yes, it would appear so. And we even have audio too. Awesome. All right. Well, hello and welcome everybody. Today we are doing a live tier list, which should be pretty fun. And it should be pretty interesting. So I have this set up for a different way. I also kind of have some background music, so if it gets a little bit too loud or anything, feel free to say something. Ooh, tier list time. Also, Rock and Stone Glitter. Aaron, hey Nova, how's it going? Everybody loves a good tier list. Yeah, and I've been meaning to update the latest tier list on Deep Rock as well. So we do have our tiers here, and we're actually going to be using Snowing Fate's tier list. So thanks for that, Snowing Fate. Really cool. Shout out to him. And this one I just like the most because it was color coded, although you can definitely tell like my one addition here for the tier list. Not gonna lie, for a minute I thought we're getting a double DRG stream week again. I mean, sort of. This one's Deep Rock related. So I have a new thing too, which is this. So we're also going to be having the various builds up too, for each of these that I would use, or that I'm going to use. So we're going to be going in order of Gunner, Scout, Driller, and then Inji. And we're going to be doing primary weapons first, then secondary weapons. We'll go through all the overclocks, starting out with clean and ending with unstable. And then we'll move on to the next tier. And then when this actually goes live for a video, I hope to put in actual like timestamps for everybody so that they can just go to the build that they want, or to the overclock that they want, and my thoughts on it. So hopefully this works out. I think it should. Aaron, this is going to be a chunker. Yeah, it's going to be a bit, but I do have it mostly prepped ahead of time too, which is pretty cool. Let's see, maybe I can even make this. No, maybe not. I'm gonna say maybe I can make that a little bit bigger, but I could potentially make the screen itself. Nah, because that's going to mess it up. Then I have to blow it back up. It'll be fine as this. Alright, so. That one might be an interesting one to figure out. Yeah. Alright, let's begin. Our very first weapon that we're going to be talking about is the minigun. And I've actually got all of the overclocks over here too, so I can just look up to see exactly what their name is, or if I forget what their effects are. So very first up, we got the minigun, and our very first overclock is a little more oomph. A little more oomph is a clean overclock. It gives you one more damage per shot, as well as it gives you a faster spin up. This was one of my favorites for the minigun. I love this thing. I don't think that this is necessarily overpowered or anything, but building it for like the 1 second spin up in tier 4 is super fun. The 1 extra damage is pretty impactful for the minigun, since the minigun just loves any amount of damage that it gets, since it has such a high rate of fire and such high DPS. The Leadstorm is one of my favorite cleans, and I would definitely put this one up in the A tier. By no means overpowered, but still pretty strong. I also might need to be like hopping back and forth through screens from this. Join just in time. Yeah, welcome, Dor. A is agreeable. Yo, what up? Hey, Sting. This is just the thing I've been waiting to see today. Awesome. Yeah, this will be made into a video. That will actually have like timestamps and everything. As you can kind of see, we have our own little build here of S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier. I don't think there's any like D tier overclocks anymore. Like the worst is just like kind of average. And then like I have the overtuned for weapons or overclocks that do feel a little bit overtuned in one way or another. Hey Dragon, how's it going? You ranking all the overclocks? That's what we're doing today. All right, next up is the miniguns. Thin Drum Walls. Thin Drum Walls is another clean overclock for the minigun. It gets you more ammo overall, as well as it gets you a faster cooling rate. That is pretty cool. No downside to this one, just like a lot of the cleans. I don't know if it's as strong as a little more oomph, but having that extra cooling on there is really cool, especially if you go with the tier 5. Oh, let me also switch the build thing. I gotta remember to do that too. So Thin Drum Wall's pretty decent. I think I'm gonna put this one into like, I think I'd put this one into either high B tier or low A tier. It's pretty good as well. Just having extra ammo for the minigun is awesome. Makes it so resupplies go even longer. And just like, again, faster cooling is nice, especially if you do the tier 5, where every kill gets you more cooldown as well. That's really awesome as well. Might want to move yourself directly to the bottom right corner. Oh yeah, you're right. Let me do that. There we go. Move myself over there. Good call. That way we can see all the tier lists. This thing is going to get blown up though. So we're going to have like so much stuff there. Damage is always nice for guns with weaker stats. Very true. I would say this one go high B-ish. Yeah, it's pretty good. Again, I don't usually prioritize it over like Leadstorm, but, or I mean a little more oomph, but it's not that much lower than it. And if I get this in like a randomizer, I'm still pretty happy about it. It's nothing like that, like it'll go with any build, however you build the minigun, which is pretty awesome. I should also mention that for any of the builds up here, these are just builds that I use with the particular overclock. And this isn't also counting for any variables. So, for example, if you want to take volatile bullets and you wanted fire on your weapon, it would make a whole lot more sense to actually do that than it would be for necessarily the build that I'm running. So just kind of keep that in mind and feel free to experiment with the different builds as well. Experimentation in this game is really, really fun. All right, up next, we've got Burning Hell for the minigun. Burning Hell is pretty awesome. Burning Hell basically gives you a short-range flamethrower on the minigun, and the only downside is that it can overheat more, which isn't necessarily a big deal, especially if you want to build it like this, where you can either have aggressive venting or fire bullets. Both are really good. Totally depends on how you enjoy using the minigun. I love aggressive venting. It's especially good on like modded difficulties and stuff. And this one is super fun. It's basically just a straight upgrade to the minigun. I put this one like S tier. I think it's really good. I don't think it's overtuned though. It's not going up to that tier, but it is going up to like S tier. Very, very good. Next one's fun. I mean, we all know Bullet Hell is going to be S tier. Maybe. We'll get to that. So, alright, then we've got Compact Feed Mechanism. And Compact Feed Mechanism gives you more ammo for the minigun, but gives you less rate of fire for it. This is our first, or this is actually our second balanced overclock. And this can be kind of awkward. You can build it quite a few different ways, and it can be pretty good, but I don't know. This one is strange. If you go with the rate of fire increase in tier 1, then you're basically just getting extra ammo, and you're still just sticking with the standard minigun. So you can build it for damage after that. You can kind of build this however you'd like. And Compact Feed Mechanism is ultimately just kind of okay. Honestly, I wouldn't prioritize it over something like Thin Drum Walls, though. I think I'm still going to put this into like B tier, but it's going to be on the lower end of B tier. Burning Hell pairs well with volatile bolts, by the way. Yes, it does. That is very true. That is another big selling point of it. So, yeah, it's got that going for it. All right, next up, we've got the... what's this? Exhaust vectoring. Up next, we have exhaust vectoring. And exhaust vectoring is similar to a little more oomph, where this one gets you more damage. This one gets you 2 damage, which is pretty good. But this does make it so your gun is less accurate. That's not a huge deal if you take the accuracy in tier 1. That way you can just, well, not really notice the accuracy debuff that much. It's still not going to be as accurate as standard minigun with the tier 1 buff in it. But it's still pretty decent. And having more damage on the minigun is really nice. I think I'd put the exhaust vectoring into either high B or low A. I guess I'll put this one low A. It's pretty good. I do enjoy taking this one. To change slowdown B gunner secondary. Yeah, that's true. Exhaust vectoring is sort of budget Leadstorm. Sort of, yeah. That's kind of the problem, is like Leadstorm exists, and this is kind of a problem with some of the overclocks just in general, where it's like they give the weapon like 3 damage overclocks, and like there's either not enough distinction between them, or like 1 or 2 of them is clearly better than the other 1 or 2, so you're just going to use that. Either way. Okay. And we've got... then we've got one of my favorite overclocks up next. This is Lead Storm. Or no, wait, this is Bullet Hell. And then we have one of my favorite overclocks, which is Bullet Hell. Bullet Hell nerfs your damage, which kind of sucks for the minigun. It also makes it so your minigun is 600% less accurate, which also kind of sucks, but you have a 75% chance of any of your bullets bouncing off of any sort of target, whether that be a bug, the ground, walls, anything really, and hitting another bug with it. This is pretty strong. This is actually really strong on like modded difficulties. Modded difficulties Bullet Hell is super fun to use because you get so much value, and this one does get better the higher difficulties or the more spawns that you have. Like on Swarmageddon, this one can also be really good. Can be surprisingly good on some other missions too, like escorts. It can be good for killing the rocks. It can be good for killing the Mactera. Sometimes Lead Storm, or sometimes Bullet Hell can actually be really, really strong. However, it does come with some downsides. It's not very good at killing really big targets. It's not good at killing like oppressors, Praetorians, dreadnoughts. It can be kind of useful against certain dreadnoughts. Like if the twins are really close, then it can still be pretty good. Stun on this can be pretty nice too if you want to take that. Fire bullets is pretty nice on it. Overheating this can be pretty good too with the exhaust vectoring. So, or not exhaust vectoring, the other tier 5. That can also be pretty good. Lead Storm is definitely one of my favorites. It's one of my go-tos, and I'm going to put this high up into A tier. I think that's where it belongs. I don't think I'm going to put it to S tier or overtuned. Totally depends on the amount of bugs you have spawning and the type of mission that you're on, so it is very mission dependent. Since you can fire it into crowds and let bullets bounce off and stun crowds. Yeah, that's really good. Never take exhaust vectoring though, because it doesn't bring something great to the table compared to a little more oomph for Lead Storm. Yeah, I would agree too, Leon. I love Bullet Hell, surprisingly okay against Praetorians if you bully them enough. Yeah, it can be useful for like hitting a Praetorian and then bouncing to other targets. Then it can actually be pretty good. Thanks for the follow, Dragon. Do appreciate that. Alright, and then our very last minigun overclock is Lead Storm. Lead Storm buffs your damage pretty massively. That's pretty cool. You get a lot more damage from this, and building full damage minigun can be pretty devastating towards single targets. You can clear through crowds with this very well too. Main downside to this one though is that you're locked in place when using it, so you can't be moving around, at least not with normal movement speed. You can, so long as you're being moved from any other means. So if you're standing on top of Doretta, she can move you. If you're standing on top of Molly, she can move you. If you're on a zip line, you can still move, or if you're doing bunny hops, then you can still kind of move, which makes it so once you get this one down, it can be really good. It can be really, really strong. It is a little bit awkward, and it's definitely difficult when you first start playing with overclocks, especially this one, if you're used to more of the just slowed down movement speed of the minigun. So I don't always use this one as much as some of the other ones, but Lead Storm is really good as well. I would put Lead Storm probably also up into our it's either low S tier or high A tier. It's definitely S tier on like Dreadnought missions and on escort missions. On other mission types might be a little bit lower just because Gunner already doesn't move around super quick, and getting missions done quick can be pretty nice, especially if you're playing on like modded difficulties. If you're just playing on like Has 5, which I'm mostly basing this off of, then Lead Storm is still going to be a very, very solid pick for just clearing up everything. So yeah, very good. Lead Storm is my go-to for dreads. It's very good. Lead Storm unstable shreds no tomorrow. So much damage. You can completely negate no movement penalty by bunny hopping. My favorite. Very, very true. Never got Lead Storm. Got really unlucky with the machine events. Yeah, I mean, it happens. You'll eventually get it though. Doesn't this overclock disable stuns? Yes, it does. It does disable stuns. Or, yeah. Or, wait, it doesn't disable stuns. It just has much less stun chance and much less stun duration. So you can still stun things. It's just for a lot shorter than the minigun otherwise would. Which isn't a huge deal, but it is something to consider. You probably don't want to build stuns with this. I mean, with the build that I have up there, it's just straight damage for everything. And can be pretty good. Alright, up next we have the Thunderhead. The heavy autocannon, which this one actually got changed since last time we talked about any of these overclocks, which is pretty cool. So our very first one is called Compact Drums. This one is a clean overclock, and this one makes it so you get more ammo and faster reload. Both of those are really good for the autocannon. Reload speed honestly doesn't matter too much because a lot of the time I don't reload the autocannon. I usually just let Born Ready reload it for me, so that can be pretty nice. This one is super flexible though. You can build it however you'd like since the autocannon already has a lot of ammo. It's one of the more ammo efficient weapons. You usually don't go through ammo with it too quick. Autocannon is also really good at clearing up crowds. This helps with it. You can build it for single targets. You can build it for more AoE damage. Really whatever you'd like. This one's nice, but it's just kind of a nice bonus and nothing too spectacular for the autocannon, so I'm going to put this one B tier. It's all around pretty solid. Let's see. Then we've got Splintering Shells. Splintering Shells is the other clean overclock for the autocannon. This one's pretty awesome. This one gives you +1 area damage and gives you 0.3 more meters of effective radius. That's really good. That helps the autocannon quite a bit since the autocannon is so good at clearing up crowds, and that's kind of what you're primarily going to be using it for. Then you're going to use your secondary to pick off single targets, unless there's a big target that you can just keep hammering away at that's just not attacking you. That's also pretty good for the autocannon. And this one just makes it so your autocannon's even more consistent. It's super nice, but nothing like super overpowered either. Probably another A tier. Very good. Not gonna lie, Thunderhead is big, feels bad, man. I know some people really don't like the autocannon. I'm okay with it. I understand it. It has failed me before at longer ranges. It's not way great for that, but it's pretty good at like close to medium range. Then it can be pretty nice. I see Neurotoxin, yes. Neurotoxin's our first overtune for sure. Well, don't get too far ahead of yourself. Although, yeah, you're completely right. Our next one is Carpet Bomber, and this one did get changed with the latest update, or not the latest update, but one of the more latest updates. So this one now has better area of... So this one now has better AoE damage, so it has a bigger explosion radius than it did previously. It still has the nerf to your standard damage or your direct damage, but it still gives you a buff for area damage. And building this one for... Oh wait, did I ever... Whoops. I didn't bring up the one for... Whoop. I didn't bring up the one for Splintering Shells. There we go. Alright, build for Splintering Shells is up there now. Gotta remember to do that. Alright, then we'll move on to Carpet Bomber. Carpet Bomber is our first balanced one for the autocannon, and Carpet Bomber did get changed since one of its latest updates. And Carpet Bomber now has more AoE, more area damage, but less direct damage. That's okay. That's not too bad. And I still don't think Carpet Bomber is one of the better options for the autocannon. It can be pretty good for just throwing out a bunch of rounds at crowds. And if you're against like Swarmageddon, it can be pretty good, although the base autocannon is really good against Swarmageddon already. This just makes it so you're even better at that. It's good for clearing up grunts. It's still not way great at dealing with big single targets, though. It doesn't kill things like Oppressors, Praetorians, Dreadnoughts super fast. It's not terrible by any means, though, either. So I think I'm going to put Carpet Bomber still probably into like B tier. I think it's still pretty decent. It's just that Splintering Shells and Neurotoxin, which we'll talk about in a little bit, kind of do its job a little bit better. And I don't know. It's still nice that Carpet Bomber did get a buff, though. That is really cool. And it feels more consistent now. So if you liked it before, that's awesome. If you didn't like it before, I don't know if it's really going to change that too much. Let's see. We need to fight to get combat mobility to have faster reloads. Yeah, that'd be kind of nice. Or just a larger magazine. I guess that's its one downside. Does it increase area of effect, or is it just area damage? It's both. It's area damage and area of effect. It's now the largest area of effect out of any of the out of the autocannons overclocks, which is pretty good. Neurotoxin is not nerfed. Yeah, not really. It just got kind of tweaked. We'll talk about that as well. Okay. So the very next one we've got is combat mobility. And combat mobility is another balanced overclock. This one makes it so you have faster movement speed when firing the autocannon, so you're not locked to the very slow movement speed. You're still slower than normal movement speed when walking, though. You have less base spread, so it's more accurate. You have a faster rate of fire increase at the start, so it scales up faster, which is pretty cool if you combine it with the Tier 2 mod, to where you can have an even faster rate of fire. That's really awesome. And then the starting rate of fire is also better. Downside to this, though, is that you get your magazine cut in half. which that one, that sucks. That kind of hurts this one quite a bit. If it had 110 and maybe it had some other downside, like I don't know what else, then this one would probably be one of the best like overclocks for the autocannon. But since we don't have that, and since it is a little bit of a negative for this, I still really like combat mobility though. It's pretty cool for just running around. It's pretty fun to run like tank gunner with this as well. Tank gunner, when you build up the rate of fire really fast, is pretty good. I think I put combat mobility into B tier as well. I think it's still pretty decent, but maybe not a go-to over some of the other ones that we have. Then we move on to the unstables, where first up we have Big Bertha. And Big Bertha hits like an absolute truck. It's pretty awesome. This one gets you way more direct damage, and it makes it so it's more accurate, which is pretty nice for the autocannon. You can actually stack accuracy with this as well if you wanted to. I believe that's in tier 2, right? I think it's tier 2. Yes, tier 2 for accuracy. And that does make it so that you have less spread overall, and the autocannon does actually feel pretty decent at longer ranges. Again, if you want to do that. Downsides to this one, though, is that you get half the magazine size, similar to combat mobility. You lose out on total ammo by 110, and you lose out on your top rate of fire. So building rate of fire does help with this. And Big Bertha is pretty solid, though. Big Bertha is definitely your damage option if you want high single target damage with the autocannon. And that's pretty nice. I do enjoy this one quite a bit. It's one of my go-tos for the autocannon, and I think I'm going to put this one up into, I'd either say low S tier or high A tier. I think I'm going to put it into high A tier because I do think Leadstorm for the minigun will outdamage Big Bertha in most cases. That being said, though, Big Bertha can be a lot more fun, and if you like the autocannon more, then go with that. If you don't like bunny hopping around, it can also be pretty good, since Leadstorm is a little bit strange to get used to, and Big Bertha isn't too strange. It's just that you have a slower rate of fire and less ammo overall. And then we move on to the big boy here, which is Neurotoxin Payload. And Neurotoxin Payload makes it so Neurotoxin Payload actually got reworked in one of the latest patches, which is interesting, because it definitely was overtuned, and I'm still going to say that it is overtuned. But Neurotoxin Payload makes it so every shot has a 50% chance of triggering neurotoxin to nearby enemies. This can splash to multiple enemies, and this makes it so every enemy gets slowed by that neurotoxin, as well as it takes damage over time. This is pretty good. This also gives you larger AoE radius, not as much as it used to though. That did get changed, and now Carpet Bomber actually has more than this, but this still has the same AoE range that Splintering Shells gives you, which is pretty cool. The downside to this, though, is that it does nerf your indirect damage, so your area damage. It doesn't actually nerf your direct damage anymore, which is awesome. And it does make it so you have less ammo. So this isn't like a complete ammo hog. So, well, I guess it really isn't. So this does go through ammo a little bit quicker than it used to. It's not nearly as ammo efficient as it used to be. This thing is really, really strong, especially when you stack the tier 5 with Fear on it. That's still super strong for clearing up all sorts of crowds. Slowdowns plus Fear are like 2 of the best effects in this game, and then damage over time on top of that. This does make it so you don't have to fire very many rounds into a crowd to kill them. I still usually do, though. I just keep firing this like most the autocannon stuff, and then once enemies have been thinned out, then I walk away. If you want to get like the most value out of this and be the most greedy, then you can just keep like firing this one shot at a time into crowds and just keep slowing everything down, and it's really, really strong. It's very strong on modded difficulties too. Like, this is one of the strongest overclocks on that. So that's going to go up into our overtuned tier, and it's our first and so far our only for the overtuned tier. Alright. Gotta check back and forth to make sure everything's still doing fine here. I love combat mobility. Yeah, combat mobility is fun. A tier. Hey, Dimple. Geneva suggestion. Yeah, exactly. Is Double Barrel missing, or am I blind? Is Double Barrel not on here? This might not have changed, so it might still be in the... Oh, it's right there. Alright, we'll have to update that for a new one, because that's... I didn't think about that. I did it for the Rocket Barrage, because I thought about that ahead of time, but we'll have to make ourselves a new one of these. Oh well. I can show you how I do that then. I feel like Bertha should be used against Betsy, just for the name. Yeah, I can see that. It is pretty good in that role. Honestly, Big Bertha's pretty good overall. It just depends on what you want. Like I said, I think the Lead Storm is a little bit better for the same role, but it's not like a terrible option by any means. It's pretty decent. Okay. What the heck? Why is the... So, on the Deep Rock Wiki, when I was going through the Hurricanes one, why is Plasma Burster Missiles just changed to bees? And why is it Max Stingagen? Why is that a thing? Okay. I mean, they're not really wrong. It's good for that too. Fandom is broken, I guess so. Bees, not the bees. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't use the fandom wiki. Because fandom is broken. Well, it's useful for just seeing what the general stats are. Some of these are incorrect, but a lot of them are pretty well on what they're supposed to be. So, let's see. Up next, we have the Hurricane. And our very first overclock is the overtuned feed mechanism, which overtuned feed mechanism is a pretty awesome clean overclock. This one gives you a faster rate of fire, which is really, really cool. And it gives you a faster moving rocket. That's also really good. This one works really well with any sort of build. It's just really strong with the Hurricane in general. And I'm going to throw this one right up into A tier. It's really good. Then for our second one, we have fragmentation missiles, which is another really good clean overclock. So fragmentation missiles just get you more AoE and better area damage, which is pretty awesome. The Hurricane built for even more AoE is actually really good for clearing up crowds. It's really good for fighting Mactera. It's really good for fighting just about everything, and doesn't really come with any sort of downside. So fragmentation missiles is going to go up to A tier as well. It's also another very good clean overclock. What does the overtuned tier mean? Something that I didn't really want to say like overpowered, but something that's extremely strong, something that kind of does like multiple jobs really well, or just does the best job of a particular like weapon set. Like out of all of these, for the things that we have, where it's like neurotoxin is better AoE in most cases than something like bullet hell. It's better AoE than something like fragmentation missiles. It's better than something like carpet bomber. So that's what it kind of means by like overtuned. Just something that kind of has a lot going for it with very little downside. So basically it's god tier. Sometimes because there's going to be a couple on here that like kind of go up there that are just like really solid, or sometimes are just super overpowered. All right, up next we have Plasma Burster Missiles, and Plasma Burster Missiles did get changed, which is pretty awesome. Plasma Burster Missiles now have much better tracking than they did previously. They technically got nerfed on escort missions because now they can no longer one-shot flying rocks, but that doesn't really matter since they clear them up still really fast, and they're much better for clearing up crowds. They're really strong on single target missions like Dreadnought missions. Like the Plasma Burster Missiles now are really good. They're probably one of my favorites for the Hurricane, and probably one of the best ones, at least for just dealing with single targets. They're not as good if you have like a bunch of small things. Swarmers are still kind of difficult to hit with it. They're really good against Mactera though too. So I'm going to put Plasma Burster Missiles actually up into S tier. I think Plasma Burster Missiles with the new buff is really good. Double Barrel might be overtuned. I don't know if Double Barrel is overtuned. I think Double Barrel is actually pretty good right now. Now they changed that? Yeah, you can no longer one-shot flying rocks anymore with it. It's not such a huge deal, because you just fire a bunch of these out and then they can just hit all the rocks. And every hit now does 8 hits, I believe. Even though it's less damage, doesn't really matter. You just keep smacking everything. And it can be really good. It's really good on like Dreadnought missions. Mine Layer's 100% overtuned. Yeah, we'll talk about that now. Alright, then we've got Mine Layer System, which Mine Layer System is probably the best grunt clear in the game, or one of the best grunt clears in the game. The only kind of downside to Mine Layer System is that it's pretty terrible on Mactera missions, assuming you're not in a very enclosed cave. If you're in a big open cave with Mactera, or leeches or menaces, then Mine Layer system isn't that great. But if that's not the case, which 90% of the time that's not going to be the case, most of the time you're going to be fighting regular grunts, swarmers, stuff like that, this is really strong. What this does is make it so every time that you fire a rocket, your rockets are no longer guided, but if they hit the ground, hit the walls, hit whatever, they will stick into the ground and then they will arm themselves to be a mine. This will explode and deal damage to everything around it. And this can do really, really high damage and can do a lot of damage per second, and it just gets you the most amount of value per shot for the Hurricane that you can have. It's really strong on certain mission types. It can be really strong on salvage missions. It can be really strong on dreadnought missions too, just because you can constantly have the dread walk through them and do a lot of damage to them. And the Mine Layer system is going to go up into the overtuned, although I don't think it's necessarily as overtuned as like Neurotoxin Payload in my opinion. It's still really strong. It definitely gets better with more swarms. It's also definitely like a personal preference thing, because I know plenty of people that really don't like Mine Layer system just because of the way that it functions and it feels really awkward. And I get that. It does feel kind of weird. It's not necessarily one of my favorites for the Hurricane, but it is still pretty good. And it multiplies your AoE damage by like 2.6. Has Carpet Bomber been nerfed? I remember really liking it. No, it hasn't been nerfed. It actually got buffed in the last patch, where it has more AoE than it did previously. So that's pretty nice. It's still like just not as strong as like Neurotoxin Payload though, for similar reasons, or even something like Fragmentation Missiles for similar reasons. It's not bad by any means though. It's one of my favorites to run like the flat cannon build on. That's super fun. I just like the clean Hurricanes. They're really good. Hurricane actually has a lot of just really good overclocks right now. Like, since they got a lot of them changed, it's really nice. Let's see, do I still have this in the same... Okay, I don't have this in the same order, so jet fuel is actually the next one that we're going to talk about. Yes, got to make sure these are all lined up too. So our next overclock for the Hurricane is jet fuel homebrew, and this one is pretty interesting. This one makes it so your missiles are much faster than they otherwise would be, and it makes it so your Hurricane is basically a hit scan then at that point, since it's really hard to steer these out to longer ranges. They do a lot of damage though, and they can clear up grunts really, really well. You do have a nerf in ammo from this as well, but that's not such a huge deal. This is really good for single target damage for the Hurricane. However, since like the Plasma Burster missiles got buffed, I honestly don't think that this one is that good for that same role, since I feel like Plasma Bursters kind of does that job a little bit better. This one can still be pretty good for a general purpose build though for the Hurricane, but honestly I don't think it's as strong as it once was. So I'm going to put jet fuel actually into A tier. It's still pretty good. It's still pretty nice. It still does a lot of damage, but I don't think it's as strong as it used to be, just because some of the other ones did get changed. I assume Volatile Bolts is going to be overtuned. Probably. Hurricane is a real game changer. Balanced and unstable overclock. Yeah. Yeah, it really got changed up quite a bit. So what about Rocket Barrage B? Overtuned high S? We'll talk about that in a second. Let's see. Up next, we have the Salvo Module. And Salvo Module is a super fun overclock. This one is an unstable overclock that makes it so now you can have a rocket shotgun. So instead of holding down the trigger and it just keep firing rockets, you then charge up rockets and you can fire up to 9 of them out. This is based on your rate of fire as well, so you can deal even more damage the more missiles that you have, as well as you can stack these up faster thanks to the rate of fire buff, which can be pretty nice. This one does really high damage per second if you want to get right up in something's face, and that can be pretty cool. You also don't technically lose the guided missiles either if you tap fire this and just fire out one missile at a time. So this one comes with very little downside. It still can be a little bit awkward to use. It's fun to run this one with fire as well. I have it set for stun. We talked about that at the start of this, where if you want a particular build, like if you want fire on things, or if you're building towards certain builds in particular, you might want to build them a little bit differently. Stun works really well on this too. It works really well against big targets, can work pretty well against dreads, and then it also works fairly well against crowds if you just line up 3 or 4 of these at a time and just keep firing them out. So Salvo Module, I'd also put up into A tier. It's also another good overclock. Salvo is also another one of those secretly a clean overclocks. Kind of. Jet fuel greater than B's for Industrial Sabo? It could be, yeah. Because that would make it just easier to hit like the weak spots on the Caretaker. Although Plasma Bursters are pretty good against the Caretaker too. Loving Gunner a lot more these days, though Driller will always be my number one. Awesome. We meet again, Ron. Welcome, Frost. How's it going? Hurricane has been changed thanks to the balanced and unstable overclocks. I do agree. I do appreciate you basing this list off of Has 5 and not modded difficulties. Yeah. I mean, if you want the modded difficulties list, Waste has an awesome video on it, and I largely agree with everything that he has on there. But on Has 5, I would say a lot of these become a lot more viable, since some of them aren't as good in modded difficulties just because you might run through ammo more. And then it kind of just becomes like, how much value can I get out of every shot? Or can this, like, one particular overclock do kind of everything? Or can it do the one thing that I really want it to do? Rocket Barrage is next. Yeah, and it's off-colored. I tried to make the right color to it just by eyeballing it, but it's not quite there because we still have like manual guidance cut off here too. I was thinking that there might be more overclocks that I missed as well, but I wasn't thinking double barrel at the time. I was like, no, I think it's just Rocket Barrage that got changed. I don't think anything else got like involved. Anything involving fire is good modded. Yeah, anything that can just stack damage over time is really, really good. Same thing goes with like poison. It's just there's not very much things that can actually do poison. All right, and then our last overclock for the Hurricane is the Rocket Barrage, which Rocket Barrage is a new overclock since of talking about overclocks again. This one's really cool. This one lets you just spew rockets out that are unguided, which can be pretty fun. It's not so good at longer ranges unless you're shooting at stationary targets like spitballers, then it's fine. This one can actually do pretty good damage and pretty good damage per second. It clears through grunts pretty well, and it can clear through big targets fairly well. You do get a lot more ammo from this as well, and a lot faster rate of fire. The main downsides to this is that you get a lot less damage overall. So you're just spraying these out. It can be really good with stuns though. Stuns actually make Rocket Barrage really nice. And Rocket Barrage is pretty good overall. I'd also put this one up into A tier. We've just got a bunch of overclocks here for the Hurricane that are all very solid, especially since they've been changed. Like, they're all really, really good. You can't go wrong with the Hurricane right now, assuming that you like the Hurricane. If not, then you're probably going to use one of the other primary weapons. All right. Oh, thank you, Tony. And thank you, Riley, for the subscribe and for the follow. Do appreciate that. Feels like the auto can. Wish it was. Yeah, sometimes. Unguided rockets are actually good for attention economy. Yeah, that's true. Mine layer's so sick. Yeah, it absolutely can be. The new weapon skins are perfect. They go well with the Platinum and Aegis armor colors. Yeah, they probably do. I don't know if I've actually put those on, but I imagine they would. They're all the same type of color. I guess also now would be a good time to say that we are doing a charity stream for the entire month, so if anybody would like to donate to St. Jude's Children's Hospital, you can. Any amount is accepted. All of it is very much appreciated. There should be a link in the description of this video or a panel down below if you're over on Twitch. And thanks everybody who has already donated. We're going to be doing this for the whole month of December. Should be a lot of fun. Cobalt Chronicle pairs nicely with Scouts Brigade. Yeah, I can see that. I wish the new orange skin was redder. Oh, okay. I can see that. I do like the new Heroic skin. That one's probably like my favorite out of them. Where I've watched so many of your YouTube DRG videos. Great work, man. Thank you. Oh, well, thank you, Tony. Do appreciate that. Yeah, we're basically doing that live right now, since I have it kind of set up, but I have to be checking everything to make sure I'm actually doing like what we're trying to do here. All right, so now we move on from the primary weapons over to the secondary weapons. And first up, we've got the Bulldog, the heavy revolver, which is a really solid secondary option just in general. And its one clean overclock is chain hit. And I don't really care for chain hit all that much. It's not a bad overclock, especially on the Bulldog. So what chain hit does is whenever you hit a weak spot, then your bullet will bounce from that target into another nearby target and deal damage to it. That can be pretty good. It's just that this doesn't always trigger because this isn't a 100% chance of triggering. And it feels kind of awkward on the Bulldog. Although a lot of the time you are going to be aiming for weak spots and the Bulldog has plenty of damage. So a lot of the time it will just one or two shot a lot of regular enemies, making chain hit actually pretty decent. And you can potentially get more value out of it. It's still not like one of my favorites for the Bulldog. And I think this is actually going to be our very first C tier just because I don't personally like it. It's C tier for me. I would understand people arguing it to B or A tier for them though, because it is just a straight bonus to the weapon. It's just not one that I really enjoy. Should have red NG colors. So like kind of a dark red and maybe a black. That'd be really cool. Like 6-shooter and elfin rounds. Yeah, they're really fun. Aaron, big fan. I rely on you for all my Deep Rock builds, though I could hop in here and say hi. Oh, well, thank you, Sheep. Do appreciate that. And I'm glad that you like the builds. We actually have them going right now. This will be made into a full video on YouTube, too, so I'm going to put timestamps into it and edit and everything. But getting everything laid out right now for it, which is pretty nice. Let's see. Do I actually have 6-shooter next? No, I've got homebrew next. Okay. Alright, then our next overclock for the Bulldog is Homebrew Powder, which this one randomizes your damage, and it randomizes it more than what Homebrew Powder on the other weapons randomizes it. So this is between 75% damage and 200% damage. So you can potentially deal double damage with the revolver, or you can potentially deal 3/4 of what your normal damage is with the revolver. That might actually not be that big of a deal a lot of the time, because low rolling on the revolver doesn't matter for regular enemies. If you're shooting a grunt with it, you should kill him regardless if you hit him in the weak spot. If you're firing at bigger targets, it can make it so you can kill things like Praetorians a little bit faster, and this is one of the better homebrew options. It's still not something I take with the revolver super often, but it can still be pretty good. So I'm going to put this one into like B tier. It's okay enough. Hey Joshua, just popping in to say you are the S tier of Overclock. I mean DRG and Bethesda YouTubers. Oh, well, thank you very much, Joshua. Do appreciate that. Yes, I know I've said Overclock in plenty of my other tier lists too that have been like Fallout related and other game related. People point that out all the time. Would love that. Thank you. Oh, well, thanks for being here. Do appreciate it. Sad thing is that would be a really strong overclock on the assault rifle if it had those numbers. Homebrew on the assault rifle? Yeah, probably. Because then you just take damage and you can't low roll against small things anymore. And you could high roll against bigger enemies. So yeah, this probably would actually be pretty decent on the GK2. I don't think it would matter on the Sabata at all if it even had this. Like it might see some more use, but I don't think it would be that different. I think those are the only two with homebrew, right? Technically the grenade launcher has it, but that's a mod, so that's not quite the same. So, just depends. And same with like, this would be super strong if you put it on like the minigun. Poor Saban. Yeah, so mistreated. Even though it did get buffed, so that's kind of cool. Alright, then we've got 6-shooter, and 6-shooter I would just consider a straight upgrade to the revolver. So 6-shooter just makes it so you have slightly less... Oh wait, nope, it's not 6-shooter. It's supposed to be volatile. I got this in the wrong order. Alright, let's do that again. Up next we have volatile bullets for the revolver, and this is one of the strongest overclocks in the game currently. This one nerfs your damage slightly by 10 damage, which the revolver doesn't really care too much about. You can take damage in either of your tier 2 or your tier 4 to get that damage back if you would like. Or you can just stack bullets with this, and this makes it so whenever an enemy is on fire, then you deal 300% more damage to them. And that's really strong. This thing kills bulk detonators super fast. It kills anything that can be lit on fire super quick. It is pretty much an overtuned overclock, and it's really, really good for that reason. The only kind of downside is that you can't really use this against dreadnoughts. You can, but you don't get any extra damage on it, so it is then a nerf to your gun since you can't light dreadnoughts on fire. But absolutely everything else in the game that you can light on fire, this thing can usually 1 to 3 shot pretty easily. So yeah, really, really good. Especially if you're accurate with the revolver, it can be really nice. DRG is one of my top 5 games of all time. Yeah, it's really fun. It's really good. I have to wonder how Turret Whip isn't an overclock. Well, that's like the same thing with Thin Containment Field. Why is that not an overclock? Since it's just super strong by itself and does change the weapon quite a bit. I don't think Turret Whip is as crazy. It was there before the overclock system introduced. Yeah, that's true. I like the new Sabata quite a bit with Sledge Pump. Yeah, it's much better, which is pretty nice. Alright, then we have 6-shooter, which 6-shooter is for the Bulldog as well. This one makes it so you do actually have 6 shots in your revolver, which is pretty cool. And it gives you a higher rate of fire, which is also really cool. You just have a slower reload speed. And that's about it, which isn't that big of a deal for the revolver, especially if you're running Born Ready and you just want to like pull this out really quick, shoot all 6 shots at something, then put it away. And this does make it so you can deal a lot of damage and a lot of damage per second at very close range against basically everything. I consider this just a straight upgrade to the revolver. And yeah, 6 shooter is going to go right up into our A tier. It is very good. It is very nice. I always take the neurotoxin in tier 5 for the bulldog. Yeah, I take it pretty often too. These are just like suggested builds, but I'll switch them up all the time. 6 shooter is one of the most satisfying overclocks. Slower reload isn't such a bad thing. 6 shots is nice though. Yeah, I agree. Waiting patiently for Fat Boy. Unfortunately, that's going to be at the very bottom, Mike, because Inji's going to be our last class, and I am going to have to move some of these around a little bit. All right, next overclock is elephant rounds, which elephant rounds is pretty cool. This turns your revolver into a little pocket sniper rifle. And that can be really good. That can actually be really nice for picking off things. I love this for picking off Tri-Jaws. This one makes it so you deal double the amount of damage that you otherwise would with a revolver, and you have much less base spread. However, you do get a lot more recoil, a lot less bullets, a slower reload, and 1 less shot in your gun, so you only hold 3 shots. That's not such a huge deal if you're only pulling this out to fire at big targets, or you're pulling this out to fire at just 1 target at a time. Tri-Jaws, it picks off with 1 shot. It can pick off spitballers and menaces really easy. It's mostly just for picking off high-value targets. Acid spitters, it's really good for picking off too. Main downside is the ammo, but gunners, primaries do have a lot of ammo, and if you want to pair this with something like the composite drums with the autocannon, or the thin drum walls with the minigun, you should have plenty of ammo overall. So I'm going to put elephant rounds up into A tier in that role. It's really good as a pocket sniper rifle. And then we have probably my favorite overclock for the bulldog, which is magic bullets. And this one is pretty awesome. This one makes it so whenever you fire a bullet, it will hit, or just so long as it hits anything. If it hits a nearby surface, actually, technically, this one did get nerfed. I forgot about that. This one got nerfed to where it no longer will bounce when you hit weak spots anymore. It will only bounce so long as you don't hit something directly with it. And if you don't hit something directly with it, it will try to bounce into another nearby enemy, similar to bullet hell. This one does nerf your damage, however, you get more ammo from this. And the nerf damage doesn't really matter because the way you build it is usually like this, where you just have explosive rounds that also can trigger poison on this, and then you just hit near things and try to splash as much poison to as many enemies as possible, because the first round will hit and then splash poison, and then it will bounce into another nearby enemy, hit and explode and splash poison as well. And that makes it really, really strong for crowd control. It's really good against crowds, and it's very much a turn your brain off type of thing with this. It's really good. I really like magic bullets. I'm going to put this one up into S tier. I don't think it's like overtuned like volatile bullets is. Volatile bullets can just 1 shot and 2 shot so many things in the game, where magic bullets just is a very fun spam fire thing for the revolver. And it's a pretty good crowd control secondary. So if you want to take a high damage primary like jet fuel, you can absolutely do it and not worry about not having something for crowds as well. That one is super, super fun. Alright, more ammo and more mag. Yes, magic bullets plus bullet hell is the ultimate no aim build. Basically, or anything with the autocannon, really. You don't have to aim the autocannon very much either, because you could do it with like neurotoxin and have a bunch of crowd control, or carpet bomber, or splintering shells, or whatever you want. Even like Big Bertha, it's like you have a little bit more accuracy there, but not too much. The only thing that contains neurotoxin is bots immunity to them and limited usage by 2 classes. Yeah, that's true. It's not way great against bots. And like during season 1 and season 2, yeah, like neurotoxin payload did technically, I guess, get nerfed, but it was like indirectly because of the bots. Howdy everybody. Hey Joey, how's it going? Hope you're doing well today. Alright, then we move on to the BRT burst pistol, which first up we have composite casings. And composite casings is pretty awesome. This just gets you more rate of fire, and it gives you more ammo, which is 2 things that the burst pistol just absolutely loves. And this is probably one of my favorite overclocks for it. It's very simple, but it's pretty good. Burst pistol is already pretty decent at longer ranges. It's fairly accurate. At least the way that I build it, it's pretty accurate at longer ranges. Good for picking off stuff. Good to just run around and use as my secondary. And I like taking it with like a more AoE primary. So I'm going to put this one up into A tier. I think it's pretty good. Then we've got full chamber seal, which is kind of one of the more disappointing overclocks in the game currently. At least in my opinion, where full chamber seal gives you a slightly faster reload and gives you slightly more damage. And by slightly, I mean 1 more damage per bullet, which is just not that much, and it doesn't hit any breakpoints. It is technically nicer, and if you take the reload speed with this, you do have a really quick reload if you want to do that. That's pretty awesome. But yeah, full chamber still I'm going to put into C tier. I think it's one of the weaker overclocks, and I wish it would get kind of like overhauled, mostly because we have 3 damage overclocks for the burst pistol. And whenever you have multiple of the same type of overclock, like 3 damage overclocks, there's always going to be 1 or 2 of them that just don't compete with the other 1 or 2. Then, oh, whoops. That one needs to be over there. Let's see, do we have compact mags next? Yes, we do. All right, then we've got compact mags next. And compact mags is also really cool. This gets you more ammo overall for the burst pistol, which is really nice. The burst pistol could use some extra ammo, but it does nerf your rate of fire and it does nerf your reload speed. Luckily, in tier 2, you can take bonuses for either one of these, depending on which you want more, faster reloads or better rate of fire. Both are really good on the burst pistol, and they make it so the downside to this one isn't that big, and this makes it so you can get out consistent damage for this, and it makes it so your burst pistol goes a long ways. This is another really good overclock that I'd put into A tier as well. Not overtuned or anything, but just solid. Then we've got experimental rounds, which experimental rounds get you more damage per shot, actually quite a bit more damage. However, you get less overall mag size, and you get less ammo overall. And less mag size doesn't really matter with this. More damage can be nice. You can actually build this for pretty good break points. And if you got a lot of ammo in your primary weapon, full damage experimental rounds is pretty good. Otherwise, going with ammo with it does make it feel a little bit more consistent, especially against big enemies. It's nothing way crazy, but it is still a nice upgrade to the burst pistol. So I'd put this one up into A tier. I think it's pretty good as well. Maybe B tier. Might be high B, low A, somewhere around there. Howdy, you're on, looking fresh. Hey, Andre, how's it going? Homebrew powder is really fun, but channeling your inner driller and minigun with magnesium bullets. Yeah, that's true. I wish the BRT got an overhaul as a whole. I think it's fine. I would like it to see it get like an overclock overall. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I don't have strong feelings one way or the other for the burst pistol. I think it's good, but totally depends. Totally depends on what you want. All right, then we have, is it, nope, electro minelets first. All right, I didn't have this in order either. All right, then we've got electro minelets as our first unstable overclock. Electro minelets make it so your bullets, now when they hit the ground, will stick into the ground and cause electro minelets that will arm, similar to the cryo minelets. This will then zap whenever an enemy walks near it, and this will deal damage over time. This does nerf your damage slightly. That doesn't matter because the electricity is going to do more damage than the amount of damage you lost anyway. And you do lose out on mag size, which also really doesn't matter with this one because you're just trying to put these down to block off an area. And this one's actually really good for clearing up just smaller enemies in general. It's really good for applying slows. It's really good on modded difficulties too. Surprisingly, this is actually one of the best for the burst pistol. And if you take the blow-through rounds with the burst pistol, then even if you hit enemies, this will still shoot through them, stick these into the ground or walls or wherever you're hitting, and then it will arm them, and then anything else walking over them, or if that enemy gets stunned or gets stuck there, then they will also just get electrocuted from it. You can do a lot of damage over time thanks to this. Electro minelets is really good for the burst pistol, and I would put this one probably A tier, although it is on the higher end of A tier. It's actually really nice for crowd control, and can be kind of okay for clearing up things at a distance. It's not way great against Mactera. I don't always like it for the Mactera. Minelets is okay. Never liked minelets overclock anyway for both weapons. Yeah, I mean, personal preference, I guess. Minelets are a bit clunky to use in my opinion. They can be, yeah. They're much better on like hold the point objectives like Black Box, where you can just set them all down. Similar to like Mine Layer system where it's really strong for that same reason. But I get it. They do feel kind of awkward. They feel a little bit weird. All right, then we've got not Lead Storm or Lead Spray next either. Then we've got Micro Flechettes. And Micro Flechettes is sadly not super strong for the burst pistol. This makes so you get a ton more ammo, you get much less recoil, you get pretty much pinpoint shots with this one, which is pretty cool. You also just get a larger magazine overall, and stacking full ammo with this can be pretty funny, where you have like 400 rounds for it. But the damage nerf is pretty heavy on this one, and it makes it so the damage is not all that consistent. You can use it as like a stun machine where you just keep stunning enemies. That can be kind of useful, but then you still have the problem of killing these enemies, and Gunner's really good at killing enemies, so it feels kind of awkward to have them in that role. The amount of bullets that you get just isn't as good as like compact mags. Even though you get many more, you just get the damage nerf to it, which just isn't that great. And sadly, micro flechettes just doesn't really have too much of a place right now, in my opinion, and I wish it would get buffed, so I'm going to put micro flechettes into C tier. It still has some use because it can be really fun to run and gun with this, and if you got like a high damage primary weapon, then you might not care about your secondary. But yeah, for like, out of the other things the burst pistol can have, I don't think this one's way great. And then for our final overclock for the burst pistol, we've got lead spray, which lead spray is super fun. This gives you way more damage for the burst pistol, but it also makes it so your burst pistol is way less accurate. So you want to be using this at very close range. I love building this for all damage. You get right up next to big things like dreadnoughts or oppressors, praetorians, anything like that, and you just spray this at them and it will chunk them pretty quickly. It does a lot of damage per second, and it is super fun to be using at very, very close range. So I'm going to put lead spray up into S tier. I think it is the best overclock for the burst pistol. At least if you want that playstyle. The compact mags might be the best overall at everything, but this one I would say is like my favorite for just dealing tons of burst damage up close. Personally, I like micro flechettes. It's good to clear out low tier enemies pretty quickly, in my opinion. Yeah, it can be pretty decent. It's very good on lower difficulties as well, when enemies don't have as much health. Especially if you want to play like lower difficulties with way more enemies in mods. Like, you're playing, let's say, like Has 3 or something, and then you have like 4 or 5 times the amount of spawns, then I imagine like micro flechettes would actually be pretty good. It's just like, I find it a little bit awkward for the time to kill against certain enemies. It's fine for killing like grunts, but I don't really like it for like slashers or guards, where it's like guards can kind of just eat through rounds for quite a while. Alright, then we've got the coil gun up next, which our very first coil gun overclock is our ultra magnetic coils, which this one is kind of a weird one. It is technically a bonus, but it's not one that I use super often. This one gets you a longer trail duration, and it makes it so your trail radius is also bigger than it normally would be. Those are nice. If you like that for the coil gun, this one is a bonus, but it's not one that I really prioritize. So I'm going to put this one into B tier. I think it's perfectly fine. It's just a bonus to the weapon. Then our second clean overclock for the coil gun is Reatomizer. And this one is a very weird overclock and kind of always has been a weird overclock, although I do kind of like it because it is so weird. This makes it so whenever you fire through a target, if that target is affected by a status effect, then you can transfer that status effect to another enemy that you also shoot through. So you have to line up at least 2 targets. Hopefully you can line up more targets with this to hit more things so that you can trigger more effects on them. This is kind of awkward to do though, because there's not a whole lot of effects that you really want to spread to enemies that you can't already do very easily with Gunner. Like with Poison, you can already do that very easy with the autocannon with Neurotoxin Payload. You can also do it really easy with Magic Bullets. And if you want to do fire, then Hellfire for the coil gun also exists, and it's kind of better for that. You also already have electricity by default on the coil gun, at least if you pick that in tier 5, so you can just punch through multiple targets that way. So Reatomizer is in a really awkward spot that it doesn't really have too much of a place right now. Usually it has the most places when it's bugged, and you can transfer other effects onto other enemies. Like you could transfer the elite status effect from other enemies onto Steve. And that was pretty cool when that happened, but that's actually happened twice. But both those times it got nerfed. So Reatomizer is going to go to C tier. It's kind of an awkward thing to use in the first place. It is really fun though, so it does have that going for it. Let's see, what do we got next? Up next we have, is it backfeeding? Yeah, up next we have backfeeding module. And this one got changed recently, which is pretty awesome. So this one gives you a whole lot more ammo for the coil gun, which is really cool. But it now no longer nerfs your damage, but it does nerf your trail duration from this. So you can't deal the damage over time that you otherwise would, but your direct damage isn't affected by this as much. That's a really nice buff to backfeeding module. I actually really like this. The trail duration I didn't really care for in the first place. It's kind of cool to have a little bit more damage over time, and that can make it so you hit certain breakpoints on certain enemies if you want to build it a certain way. But I've mostly just been using this as like a pocket sniper, where I just pull it out, charge it up, fire it through walls to hit leeches, or through big targets to hit them just really hard and likely stun them with this. And that's mostly what I'm going for. And it's really good for that. So this one I would actually say got buffed quite a bit, and I'd put it up into A tier. I think it's really good. Then we've got the Mole, and Mole is pretty awesome. Mole makes it so you deal more damage the more surfaces you punch through and then hit an enemy, which this one can stack damage incredibly high. It can actually be the highest out of anything in the game because there's no real limit to the surfaces that you can punch through. So if you punch through like 20 surfaces, you can one-shot a lot of things with this, and it can be really fun. It's usually not super practical to do that though, and this does come with the downside of a slower charge speed. Not a huge deal. Especially if you just ping targets. If you ping something like an oppressor or a dreadnought, then you can just fire through whatever the nearest wall is or floor or whatever it might be to hit this and deal a little bit more extra damage, which can be pretty good, especially if you can get through like 2 or 3 walls. Usually I would just say shoot it through 1 or 2 and you're getting the bonus. You're also not getting any downside in terms of damage for this from the standard coil gun. So even if you can't punch through walls right away, it's still going to hit things pretty hard, and it's really, really strong on dreadnought missions. I'm going to put Mole up into S tier. I don't think it's overtuned, because you still have to go through the process of setting it up or the process of actively using it by getting things in your way. It is still really strong though when you do get those opportunities to use it and punch through multiple surfaces. You can also pretty much one-shot the twins. Yeah, that's true. Thermal Catalyst is currently bugged with Mole. Is it? I haven't tried it with Mole. I've tried it with like backfeeding module and it seems to work pretty fine. Mole shoots through time and space. Yeah, exactly. Alright, next one is Hellfire, and Hellfire actually got nerfed recently, which is kind of surprising. Hellfire is one of the best crowd control options in the game. It is very strong even after it got nerfed. So this one has actually been nerfed a couple of times now, because it doesn't build up heat as fast as it used to, or it doesn't linger as long as it used to, so you can't build up heat as efficiently with it, although it still kills turrets super easy. It's really good for killing crowds. You can wipe out an entire crowd of grunts just with one shot from this, which is pretty crazy. Downsides to this, though, is that you get less ammo overall, which that does kind of suck. It also charges slower, and it has less trail duration than it used to. So all of those are kind of downsides to this, but it's still a really, really strong overclock, and it's definitely overtuned on like modded difficulties and on higher difficulties where there's more things to fight. On lower difficulties, I wouldn't say it's overtuned at all, just because there's not as many things that you can shoot with this, and then the nerfs feel pretty appropriate for it. It's just that once you are playing with tons and tons of bugs on there, even on Has 5 where you can have tons of bugs on the screen, just firing one shot from this just across the line of bugs where they're coming, you can wipe out all of them, which is pretty crazy. So I would still say Hellfire is overtuned. I'm going to put it on like the lower end of that, even after it got nerfed. It's just that it does its job so well. So not really good on like dreadnought missions. It would be much lower if you're just considering that. Same thing like volatile bullets where you can't light them on fire. Still hits as hard as the coil gun regularly hits though, so it's still going to hurt them quite a bit. It's just not going to have all the extra effects that it has from its lingering fire on there. It's a really good overclock as well. Then we have triple tech chambers, which also recently got changed, and it actually got buffed, which is pretty cool. Triple tech chambers used to be like the most overpowered overclock in the game when it was bugged, and it gave you 50% damage reduction for the entire match, but it's no longer bugged, so it's not as strong as it used to be. This is still pretty good though. This one allows you to fire up to 3 shots from your coil gun in quick succession. These have to be within 1 second from one another, so you can fire 1 shot and then fire the other 2 shots. The other 2 shots don't have any pen, so you can't punch through the ground with them like you can with the first shot. So just keep that in mind. But those second 2 shots did get buffed recently from doing 50% damage to doing 75% damage, and they didn't have any more cost associated with them. So triple tech chambers is actually pretty decent right now. Still can be a little bit awkward to use, but not as awkward as it used to be. So I'm going to put this one up into A tier. I think it's actually pretty good, and it can still kind of make use of the damage reduction in tier 4. Just not to the point where it could previously, where it was bugged and you could use it constantly. No way it's Hellfire. Rip Hellfire. Hellfire's still crazy good. Yeah, Hellfire's still crazy good. I don't think they even nerfed Hellfire because Hellfire was crazy against like big groups of enemies. I think they nerfed Hellfire because they were trying to buff Thermal Necro Catalyst with it and figured that that would be the one that most people use. But honestly, you don't need to with Hellfire. Like, you can put any of the other options on there. I actually like the bigger radius for it, just so you can hit more things. But it's still really, really good. Alright, and that takes us from Gunner to Scout. And I actually have to get these in order. And yeah, we have to make a new boomstick one too. So let me get us a double barrel. Well, thing for this. So let me open up my other recording software that I don't use for recording anymore and just use it for taking screenshots, basically, because it's kind of nice for that. All right. Take a picture of that. All right, and then let's edit. Well, yeah, edit this to where it will actually work. And then I'll have to rearrange all these so that they actually go in the correct order of, like, the builds. New Necrothermocalus was already good enough. Yeah, it's pretty good. I like the way they changed it. I like that they also changed the audio part of it, too. Because the audio part was kind of annoying, where it would be super loud. Is that, like, about the same as the blue on there? No, that's a little bit darker. Maybe that might work. All right, grab this. And then we'll scale this up a bit. I kind of messed up the... it doesn't matter. This doesn't need to be super accurate. Just kind of good enough. Alright. Then, let's see. How did Snowing make his? Okay, so it'd be boomstick and then, like, double barrel. Do that. Whoops. Yeah, sure, that looks fine. Okay. Yeah, that'll be fine. Alright, sure. Alright, now hopefully this doesn't screw up our list. Okay, it didn't. Good. We'll put that one up there, and where's our other double barrel? Double barrel, where are you? Oh, it's still not quite the right color. Maybe it should have been darker. We can definitely tell which ones are mine. I love double barrel, it's so strong. Yeah, double barrel is awesome. Alright, now I gotta move these in order. So first up we got GK2 stuff. So all of this needs to be up here. Clean overclocks. I'm not sure. I guess I could check.
Gooble gobble, one of us, one of us.
Thanks, Jordan. Do appreciate that. Yes, appreciate you upping your membership too. Do appreciate that. That's really cool. Enjoy early. Well, you already enjoyed early access to videos, but hey, enjoy more early videos, I guess. Let's see. What else do we got for GK2? Let's see, we've got, yeah, electrifying reload. I guess M1000 should probably go up here too, because we're going to need that as well. Overclocked firing mechanism. Drak's going to need to go up here. More Drak stuff. More boomstick stuff. M1000 things. More Drak stuff. That needs to be over there. More of the GK2 stuff. Yeah, Bullets of Mercy too. I forget GK2 has 7. Maybe because I don't use all of them super often. Let's see, Drak. More Drak stuff. We'll at least get all the primaries here, and then we can kind of move the secondaries around as we go. Huh. Yeah, I didn't think about this, though. These are still, like, older ones where aggressive venting was a balanced and impact deflection was a clean, rather than vice versa. That doesn't matter so much, because at least they're on there. We just gotta acknowledge that they changed a bit. Yeah, I canceled membership and renewed it to get the AI prompt. Oh, awesome. Double barrel was one of the 3 overclocks that I never bothered paying for until the rework. Got stuff now. Yeah. Have you tried Lethal Company yet? I tried it a little bit solo. I was going to play it with friends, but friends were busy, so it's going to be a little bit later, but I might make some, like, videos on it, too. Hey, Levi, how's it going? AI mission control, yeah. Deletes hordes of grunts. Aggressive venting is my favorite scout overclock. It's really good. Yeah, alright, so now we move on to Scout, and our very first overclock is compact mags, or compact ammo, for the GK2. And this one's pretty good. Compact ammo for the GK2. Let's see, what does that actually do entirely? This gets you 5 more magazine size and recoil reduction. Couldn't remember if it was that or spread reduction or whatever it was. This is nice. This is a bonus to the GK2. GK2 loves this. Since the GK2 got reworked, it's been really nice. And this overclock is pretty good overall. I'd put this one into B tier. It's a nice bonus. Then we've got... I'm assuming it's going to be gas rerouting next. Yeah. And then we've got gas rerouting. Gas rerouting gives us more rate of fire and a faster reload speed. This one is super fun to stack the reload speed in tier 1 with, and then you have a super fast recoil, or you have a super fast reload with the GK2. And yeah, that's really nice. Extra rate of fire for the GK2 is always good. This one is a clean, so it's pretty flexible on however the heck you want to build it. Really good overall. I would put this one also like B tier. I think it's pretty good for the GK2. And then we've got homebrew powder. This one randomizes your damage, similar to the homebrew powder that we talked about with the revolver. This one is between 80% and 140%. So you can do more damage, and statistically you will do more damage per shot, and since the GK2's damage got changed, at least in mod form, you don't have to worry about low rolling this anymore, and you don't have to worry about just building all damage for it. So homebrew powder actually did get buffed as well for the GK2, and it does feel quite a bit better. I still don't pick it over like the other clean options, but I'd put it B tier. It's better than it used to be, which is pretty nice. Then what do we got next? Is it over? Yeah, all right. Then we've got the overclocked firing mechanism. This is one of my absolute favorites for the GK2. This one makes so you have double the amount of recoil, but you have much higher rate of fire. And stacking full rate of fire on this is really, really fun. It makes so it's a little bit hard to control at longer ranges, but it is really good, and it makes so you can shred through things really fast. I love going with a straight 2 build for this, having the armor breaking on it and just spraying down any enemies that come near me. Super, super fun. I'm going to put this one A tier. I think it's pretty good for the GK2. Then we have Bullets of Mercy as our other balanced overclock, and Bullets of Mercy is kind of interesting. This one got changed, so this one nerfs your overall magazine size. However, if you stack all magazine with this, or magazine in tier 3, you go up to having 24 rounds, which is still more than enough. And this one lets you have more damage per shot on enemies so long as they're affected by a status effect, which Scout is really good at putting status effects on enemies, as well as if you're playing in a group, there's basically always going to be enemies with status effects on them. It would be very, very uncommon to not have any sort of status effects in the group, because status effects count for basically everything at this point, so it did get buffed in that way too. So if they're affected by pheromones, if they're affected by electricity, fire, ice, whatever it might be, you just deal more damage to them. And that's pretty good. This one I find a little bit awkward sometimes. You can technically trigger it even more with the GK2 if you want to take the stun in tier 5, but I really don't. All of your grenades work really well for triggering this, and if you have like a driller on your team, anything that driller has is going to trigger this, so I'm going to put this A tier. I think it's really good. We doing some builds today? Yeah. Doing builds, doing overclock, tier list, updated one since people have been asking for this for a while. And I wanted to do it live, and I've even got like the builds up here too, so that if anybody's looking for a particular build, then there's at least one build that you can run with it. Up next is AI Stability Engine, which this one got pretty heavily buffed thanks to the update. It got buffed overall, but then since the GK2 got buffed, this one got buffed even more. This one makes it so your GK2 has no recoil and it has no spread. It is super accurate at very long range. It's really accurate at any range. It does nerf your damage, but the nerf doesn't matter anymore because if you just take the damage in tier 2, you're fine, and you don't low roll at all, and you get even more weak spot damage. AI Stability Engine is probably the best GK2 overclock right now, and I would put this one up into S tier. It is very, very nice to use. And then we have Electrifying Reload, or Electric Reload. This one is pretty interesting because this one technically sort of got buffed. It got changed a little bit too with updates. So what this one does is whenever you shoot an enemy, you stick a detonator inside of them, and then when you go to reload your gun, this will trigger and electrocute them. This will slow them down as well as it deals damage over time, and it can actually do a lot of damage over time. This does nerf your overall ammo, which kind of sucks, but that doesn't really matter because you get a lot of value from this, and if you want to spread out damage, you can pretty easily with this one, so that is nice. It still feels a little bit awkward to use against big single targets like dreadnoughts. You'll still be able to zap them, but it doesn't feel as good as like when you're just spraying this into crowds, where then it can feel pretty decent. I think I'm going to put Electrifying Reload into, it's either A or B tier. I think B tier for me personally. I don't use it a whole lot, but I understand some people really liking it and arguing it to A tier. Totally understandable then. Actually, I have a question. Does Bullets of Mercy get increased towards enemies if more status effects on it? No, it doesn't scale more. So long as they're affected by one or all the status effects, it'd be the same amount of damage bonus that you get regardless. I guess technically you would get more because if something's frozen, you're dealing extra damage to it, but that's just from the frozen status effect and not from Bullets of Mercy. I really like Electrifying Reload, to be honest. You shoot a grunt once and you're basically dead after you reload. Yeah, that's true. It can be really good for saving ammo. It can be really, really nice for that. Bullets of Mercy does work with pheromones? Yeah, it does now. It used to not. It used to only count towards certain status effects, and pheromones wasn't one of them, and I think neurotoxin was another one? I could be wrong about that. I think there was 2 or 3 status effects it didn't work with. Electrifying Reload plus Tri-Shot with the Tier 5 mod makes Dread and Hunts funnier. Yeah, that's true. It is good for that. Although you can kind of already do that just with the Trifork Volley already. So that's pretty nice. Alright, then we've got the M1000 Classic Overclocks. And our very first one is not Minimal Clips, it's Hoverclock. Hoverclock is a super fun overclock that makes it so if you use your focus shot while you're in midair with the M1000, you start to float. So you can reduce fall damage from this. You can also reset this so long as you get a kill with the M1000 while you're floating, which can be kind of cool. It doesn't actually change anything for the M1000, and the base M1000 is quite good. So if you just don't want to fall as much, or if you want to float around, this one can be pretty nice. I like it. I honestly don't know where to put it though. Maybe I'll put it into B tier because it's not super necessary or anything. I think there's better overclocks for this, and something like Special Powder can be a little bit better. But it's still a super fun overclock to actually be running, and it's definitely like S tier in terms of fun. Then we have Minimal Clips, which is another clean overclock, which is really good. This one makes it so you have faster reloads with the M1000, which is pretty good, and you also have more ammo than you otherwise would. So you can actually go up to 18 rounds with this in the M1000, which is really nice. If you take armor breaking in tier 1 or tier 2 with the M1000, then you can just focus shot, body shot regular grunts. You can already one-shot, headshot regular grunts with the M1000 without any overclocks on it, on any difficulty. And Minimal Clips is just a super nice quality of life bonus to the M1000. I'd put this one up into A tier. It's really nice. Then we have, Then we have Active Stability System, which Active Stability System is another super solid overclock for the M1000. This makes it so you're no longer slowed down by using the focus shots, which is really good, as well as you can make focus shots quicker than you already could. The only downside is that you have a slower reload. That doesn't matter though, once you get good with the M1000 and you can reload cancel it effectively, it's not going to add that much more time to it. And this one just feels like a straight upgrade to the M1000, like 100% of the time. It is really, really nice. I would put this one up in A tier. It's also really solid on like modded difficulties where you may not necessarily want anything besides just the base M1000 for picking off stuff. Like it honestly gets better the higher difficulty you play on too. Then we've got everybody's favorite or least favorite depending on who you ask, and that is Hipster. And Hipster is a super fun overclock. It's very strong on Hazard 5, however it does kind of fall off on modded difficulties, funny enough. where the amount of extra ammo that you get with Hipster doesn't matter as much as just killing things quicker, but on regular difficulties, like Hipster is amazing. Hipster lets you just mow through crowds. You can spam fire this super quick. It does pretty good damage. You can kind of build it however you'd like to. I usually like just taking a spam fire build for all of the ammo and just keep firing this at absolutely anything I see. It is super, super fun. And I would put Hipster actually not into the overtuned, but just into S tier, because I actually don't think it's overtuned. It's good. It's very, very good. The ammo economy on it's amazing. It's probably the top end of S tier for me. But I understand, at least on like modded difficulties, where it somewhat falls off later, because it does take a while to kill things then, and there's a lot of enemies when you're spawning them in like that. But other than that, it's really, really good. Active stability system is so fun. Yeah, active stability system is my favorite. Don't really care about the reload. You don't have to worry about speed. Yeah, that's true. Special powder with Overclock is a fun combo. Absolutely, yeah. Electrifying focus shots hits some more breakpoints and allows more flexible. Yeah, it kind of can. When I take the M1000, I feel like I'm being self-indulgent because I am an awful sniper. Honestly, it doesn't really matter. You can just build it like a battle rifle and just use it like that. It's pretty good in that role too. Let's see. Is this... that doesn't really help us, does it? I'm gonna say maybe moving that would help, but not really. It's still gonna be awkward regardless of where it's at. Oh well. Alright, then we have... What's our first one? Oh, we do have Electrifying Focus Shot. First up for our Unstables, we have Electrifying Focus Shot, and this one makes it so you now do less damage than you otherwise would with Focus Shots. However, your Focus Shots now electrocute enemies so they deal damage over time, which makes it so you can actually have more damage on this than you otherwise would. Which can be good, but it's a little bit awkward since it deals damage over time. Electric Focus Shot is not really one of my favorites for the M1000, but it can be pretty decent, and I would put this one actually into B tier for me personally. I think it's okay. I think it can be good. It's pretty fun with the faster focus as well, and you don't need to take armor breaking on this if you don't want to. It can also be pretty good with the blow-through rounds as well. And then our last overclock for the M1000 is Super Cooling Chamber. And Super Cooling Chamber has been changed since the last time I did one of these lists, to where now it does more damage than it did previously. It doesn't have as many downsides as it did previously, which is good. It still has certain downsides which make it a little bit awkward to use. So you don't get as much ammo, you have a slower focus speed, and you also can't move when you're focused in with this. You can still jump, which is kind of cool, or if you're moving when you're focusing, then you'll still keep moving with it, so if you flung yourself somewhere. It actually makes it a pretty good sniper rifle, and it's kind of funny that they keep buffing like the Giga Chad Scout to where it's actually a pretty decent overclock now. I'm going to put Super Cooling Chamber into B tier. It's definitely better than it once was, but it is still kind of an awkward overclock to use overall. It's not super intuitive a lot of the time. It does feel a little bit strange to use sometimes. Certain mission types it's really not that good on. It's really not good on like Swarmageddon, but it is really good on like Dreadnought missions, so it does have kind of a niche that it fills, which is pretty awesome. Electrifying Focus Shot is my favorite. I used it a lot for crowd control with blow-through rounds and the pheromone darts. Yeah, it can be really nice. Which overclock do you think is the best for the M1000 for huge crowds? You could, I guess it depends. Might be like Minimal Clips or Hipster. Hipster's pretty nice. Or it could even be the Electrifying Focus Shots. Depends how much value you can get from each like blow-through round. If you just want to spam and keep running around, then Hipster's probably the best. If you want to use focus shots, then probably either Electrifying Focus Shot or Minimal Clips is the best, just so that you can keep punching through hordes of enemies and hopefully kill them that way. That way you can just clear up regular grunts pretty fast. And if you're hitting headshots, you can clear up like slashers and stuff pretty quick too. So that's nice. It just depends on what you want. Active Stability System would also be a decent option. Worst part of Super Cooling Chamber is wasting on grunts. Yeah, that's true. You don't want to be really using it on grunts, but I can understand like you having to use it every once in a while. Alright, moving from the M1000 to the Drac, our very first overclock is the Thermal Liquid Cooling. This makes it so your Drac doesn't overheat as much, and it doesn't produce as much heat per shot, and that's pretty good. Drac loves that. It's nothing way crazy for the Drac, but it is a nice bonus, so this is going to go up into B tier. Not too much to talk about there. Then our next overclock is, well, it says it's an unstable, or it says it's a balance here, but it's actually a clean overclock now. This one is aggressive venting. So aggressive venting makes it so you can manually overheat, well, no, it doesn't. Aggressive venting makes it so that you can overheat your Drac, and when it does overheat, this deals fire damage to everything around you. This one's really cool, especially if you take the manual overheat in tier 5, where you can just keep overheating this, you deal a lot of damage. This is one of Scout's best crowd control options in the game, and it is super fun to play. So I'm going to put this one up into A tier. I also wasn't expecting the music to have lyrics partway through. Gotta change that, because otherwise it's gonna be awkward with lyrics mixed in. Alright, looks like we've got another like 4 songs, 4 or 5 before that changes again. I just find it awkward to try to like talk over lyrics sometimes. Alright, let's see, what is our next one then? Sorry, I'm still clicking around over here. Okay, Rewire Mod is our next one. I'm back. I had to open up the laptop and make sure secondary slots using... Oh, okay. Best gun without overclocks, Breach Cutter, M1000 shotgun for Ingy. Yeah, those are all pretty good. Breach Cutter is really strong without any overclocks. M1000 hits nice breakpoints without any overclocks. Hurricane's pretty good without any overclocks. Revolver's pretty good with no overclocks. GK2 is pretty decent. Sludge Pump's pretty good. Flamethrower's solid. Minigun, yeah, Minigun's pretty good too. Most of the weapons are honestly pretty good without overclocks. Just depends on what you're kind of going for. Some of them do change it quite a bit though. Alright, next overclock is Rewire Mod. And Rewire Mod makes it so whenever you do overheat your gun, then it refunds you ammo back based on the amount that you used. You can also manually overheat this and you will get ammo back from it. This does nerf your ammo overall, and it also makes it so you can overheat this a little bit quicker. But getting ammo back and having constant sustained fire for the Drac is pretty good by itself. I don't think this is one of the strongest because I don't think the Drac is one of the strongest primaries, at least in this type of role. But if you want a gun that you just don't have to worry about ammo with, Rewire Mod is a really good option. So I'm going to put this one up into B tier. I think it's still pretty good for what you get. It's very awkward to use on certain missions though. Escort missions and like salvage missions, it's very awkward to me. Which overclock do you think is the best for... Oh, I already read that one. Laptops, 500 or NVMe drive, which gets set up on the original one died. Oh, that sucks. Yeah, I understand that with Lego. Yeah, that can kind of suck. Alright, and speaking of changed overclocks, we also have the impact deflection, which is not a clean overclock anymore, and it hasn't been for a while. This is an unstable this is a balanced overclock now. That makes it so every time that you fire the Drac, your rounds will bounce. And this one can be kind of cool. You usually want to shoot this directly underneath something to where you will hit the ground underneath them, do damage to them with like the splash, because the splash is really good from this, and then have it bounce up and hit that enemy and then splash again and deal more damage once again with it. At least that's the way I like using impact deflection. This does come at a rate of fire nerf, which kind of sucks for it. This is really good for crowds though. It's pretty good on the Drac just for clearing up small enemies. It's really good on Swarmageddon. It can be pretty good on quite a few different missions, so I'm going to put impact deflection up into A tier. I think it's pretty nice. Then we've got overtuned, it looks like. Then for our first unstable overclock, we have the overtuned particle accelerator, which this one makes so you do a lot more damage with the Drac. However, you have a lot more spread, and you also overheat the Drac quicker. So that can be kind of a bad thing. And by a lot more spread, it is a lot more spread. Going with extra accuracy on this can kind of help, but I find it a little bit awkward to use, at least in that role. Usually I just use it at very close range, which Scout can be pretty good for getting in and getting out of close range engagements without actually taking too much damage. This one can do a lot of damage per second, which is really fun. And it can work really well against crowds of enemies. So in that role, I'm actually going to put this one A tier. I think it's pretty good. I can understand people not liking it though, because at longer ranges, it's super inconsistent. Wish I could add my own music during the game. Diggy Diggy Hole is such an awesome Weird Dwarf song. Yeah, that's true. So I want to try to mess with upgrade boot drive, so I'm going to buy a larger secondary drive. Oh, okay. That works then. Rewire mod is pretty fun to use. Literally, if you never wish to resupply your gun. Yeah. I can't remember the math, the exact numbers, but like 20,000 rounds is total before overheat each time. Yeah, you can get a lot of value out of it. It's just a lot of the time you don't need that much value out of your gun, though. And the downtime for it can be a little bit of a pain. I don't think it's such a huge deal either way, but it is something to consider. Alright, then we've got... oh, shield battery next. Then we've got shield battery booster as our next overclock, and this one did get buffed as well, which is pretty cool. So this one lets you have more damage once your shield is completely full. If you're missing any part of your shield, then you don't get the extra damage from it, which is kind of a bummer. It does come with some extra bonuses though. It comes with more ammo and a faster rate of fire by default. However, this does make it so your gun cools down slower and it overheats quicker, and if you do overheat this, then it breaks your shield as well as it has more overheat duration than it normally would. There is something interesting though. If you manually overheat this and break your own shield, then your shield will start recovering faster than it normally would, since it resets that, which is kind of cool. It has that going for it, and in a melee build, the shield battery booster is actually pretty fun to use, but it's still a very awkward overclock to use effectively, so I'm still going to put shield battery booster into like C tier. I find it doesn't give me as much value as some of the other Drac overclocks. It's fine enough, but not anything way crazy. That's just me, though. And then for our last overclock, we have thermal exhaust feedback for the Drac. At least last overclock for the Drac. This one makes it so you get more damage, or you can now put fire on your Drac based on the total amount of heat gauge that you have. So the more your heat gauge goes up, the more damage you can do, the more fire you can inflict on an enemy, the faster you can light things on fire. This does make it so your overheat duration is longer, and you do have more heat per shot though. So that can be kind of a downside. However, this is probably one of Scout's best ways of putting fire onto targets, and this is probably one of the best overclocks for the Drac. So I'm going to put this one on the very low end of S tier, maybe high A tier, because something like aggressive venting I actually use more often than this, but this one is pretty good for that particular role, which can be really good in team settings, especially if you're building around like volatile bullets. That can actually be super nice. Alright, now we gotta move things around again, because now we gotta go over to double barrel. And let's see. Put those there. What else do we got? We got jumbo shells. We got double barrel. Yeah, even if it's color-coded weird. Zukov stuff. More Zukov stuff. Oh yeah, we got shape shells as well. Shape shells do get buffed, which is pretty cool. Yeah, set those up there. Alright, should be good to go now. Then I'll have to reorganize drillers and stuff. I take the weird shield one on the shield link on escort duty. Yeah, you can do that. It's not so bad then. I don't know, it's always felt weird to me. Like, it feels the most fun in, like, a melee build, where you have this and, like, See You in Hell, so that you can just keep using this, and then if your shield breaks, you can just start, like, smacking things. And it's pretty good then, especially mixed with, like, Berserker. I don't know, even then it's kind of awkward to use, but can be pretty cool. Yeah, there's a lot of time you never need that much value from Rewire mod. Yeah, Overtune Particle Accelerator, love it for Dreadnought missions. Yeah, it can be really good for that. It can be really good for crowd control. Maybe if it gave Scout more shield strength, then it would make the overclock better. Yeah, potentially. That'd be nice. Real Dwarf only needs his trusty pickaxe. Exactly. Alright, what one do I have for... okay. Compact shells. First up for the boomstick, we've got compact shells. And compact shells gives you more ammo and a faster reload. That's pretty nice for the boomstick. It's not anything way crazy, but it is a solid B tier. Nice clean overclock. Then we've got special powder, probably one of the craziest clean overclocks in the game, and a really, really fun one. This one makes so whenever you jump in the air and fire your shotgun, you get flung in the opposite direction. And this is by far one of the most fun overclocks in the game. It does give you a ton of mobility too, which actually makes it pretty good. And this one I'm actually going to throw up into our overtuned tier. I don't know if it's actually technically overtuned because I've seen plenty of scouts kill themselves inadvertently with this, but it is like super fun to actually watch and to actually play with. It's really fun to build all ammo with this too, so you can just use it more often, and it's really good for like breaking your falls and everything. It just kind of fits a really fun role. It also doesn't nerf the shotgun in any way, so the shotgun still is really good for clearing up big things and clearing up swarms. So even if you don't end up using it in like a small cave, then you still have the basic boomstick, which is good enough a lot of the time. And then for our last clean overclock for the boomstick, we've got stuff shells, which gives you one more pellet and one more damage. And this one's nice too. This one just gets you more consistent damage with the boomstick. This one technically, I guess, sort of got nerfed just because some of the other overclocks got buffed. It's not as strong as it used to be, but it's still pretty good. This one used to just be a straight upgrade over double barrel, but luckily double barrel got reworked entirely, and now it's actually really good. So I'm going to put stuff shells into B tier. I still think it's quite nice. Then we have our one balanced overclock for the boomstick, which is shape shells. And shape shells did get buffed too recently. It got buffed with its reticle getting better and its spread pattern getting better, so it's even more accurate than it previously was. And it did get buffed not too long ago too by not having the pellet nerf but having an ammo nerf. And the ammo nerf doesn't really matter that much with it, and it makes it so it's actually really consistent at hitting things at long range pretty effectively. So I'd put the shape shells into A tier. I think it's actually a pretty decent overclock right now. Yeah, that is true too, Levi. You can be kind of tankier thanks to the shield break if you abuse it in that way. Ship shells is nice for Magterra too. Yeah, that's true. It's really good for picking off Magterra. It's really good for picking off like acid spitters too. Dwarf maxing. Gotta max those dwarfs out. Special powder, I've seen plenty of dwarfs kill themselves inadvertently with it. I raise my hand. Well, I would too. Because there's plenty of times where I've fired at something in the air and then it like broke my feet and either nearly killed me or did kill me. Alright, then we've got our unstable overclocks for the boomstick, with jumbo shells being our first one, and jumbo shells is just super solid. Gives you more damage, gives you a slightly longer reload, which doesn't matter for the boomstick, and it makes it so you have less ammo overall, but the amount of damage you get is pretty insane. You can do a lot of burst damage with jumbo shells. It's super nice. Jumbo shells I would put up into S tier. I think it's one of the best secondary options for scout, because you can just switch to this, blow something apart like a Praetorian, and then switch back to your primary weapon and let either the shotgun reload itself thanks to the tier 5, or Born Ready reload it, and then you just have it for like that option of clearing off crowds or clearing off big things super quick. Then our last overclock, which did get changed, is double barrel, and double barrel is way better than it used to be. So double barrel for the boomstick used to just be an awful overclock. It was just a straight downgrade to the boomstick since you had to fire out both barrels every time. You still have to do that with the new double barrel, but it is so much better now because now the shockwave of the double barrel actually gets a lot more damage. You can stack even more damage with this. You don't get as heavily penalized for taking this one either in terms of ammo, because you can clear off things super good. This is one of the Scout's best crowd clear options, because you just fire this into a group of enemies very close up. It's very good with the IFG grenade in combination, since you can slow everything down and then just clear them out. It does make it so your shotgun has more spread, but you're firing out twice the amount of pellets too. And that shockwave is good enough for just clearing off grunt groups. The pellets are really good for clearing up big things too. So double barrel went from bottom of D tier, probably actually up to S tier. I really love the new double barrel. I think it's really good. Maybe not as strong as like jumbo shells in every situation, but yeah, this just feels so much better than it used to be. It is really, really nice. I don't have double barrel yet. Yeah, it used to be like the worst overclock in the game because it just nerfed your shotgun. Now it's really solid. Like 10 times more shockwave damage is amazing. Yeah. I've obliterated a nemesis before a double barrel. Yeah, you absolutely can. It deals tons of damage between increasing pellet size, shockwave, and hot bullets. Yeah, it's really, really good. Alright, then we move on to the Zhukovs, and our very first overclock is minimal magazines, which this one gets you more ammo inside the gun, which is pretty cool, and a faster reload. And if you stack this with the reload speed in tier 2, you have like a super quick reload. It's less than 1 second to actually reload your Zhukovs and get right back in. Super nice to have on the Zhukov, but nothing way crazy because the base Zhukovs I wouldn't say are something way crazy, so I would say B tier. Very nice. Then we have custom casings. Custom casings makes it so you have even more ammo inside the Zhukovs, but you have less rate of fire overall. If you take the rate of fire in tier 2, then you can actually have even more rate of fire than you otherwise would, and then you just stuck with the large magazine size, which can be pretty nice. It's, again, another decent overclock, but nothing way crazy. I'd put this one into B tier as well. It's perfectly fine. Then we have cryo minelets as our next overclock, and cryo minelets is pretty cool. Cryo minelets work similar to electro minelets like we talked about with Gunner, except for these ones are ice. This does nerf your damage, but it makes it so anytime that you shoot this into the ground, it sticks a cryo minelet there, and then enemies walk across, it can trigger that, and it can freeze multiple enemies, or freeze just one enemy depending on how you use it. You can also take blow-through rounds with this and punch through targets. It makes it really good for crowd control. It's not really the best for dealing with big targets like bulk detonators. You can't freeze them super quick, so it is a little bit awkward there. But still, really, really nice overclock, and I would put this one up into A tier. I think it's really good. Zooks don't really have a use that much. Not sure why. Depends on how you want to use them. They kind of work as a general weapon against everything. Randomizer beer greater than tier list. Exactly, Shane. Exactly. Boomstick and Zhukovs are my main used secondaries. Very cool. They can be really nice. The auto reload is so nice for the Boomstick. Love to not take Born Ready. Yeah, you can do that. You can also do it with the flare gun too if you like. Oh, we found another song with lyrics on it. Let's see, can I... There we go. Looks like we're good for a little while here. Not that it matters that have lyrics, it's just that it gets kind of confusing to talk over while I'm listening to part of this. Alright. Then we have embedded detonators for the Zhukovs, which is our next overclock, and this one's really cool too. Embedded detonators makes it so you can stick the detonators into enemies. This does nerf your damage and nerf your ammo heavily. Damage doesn't matter because most of your damage is going to come from the explosions then. And if you just stack ammo with this, it's really good. You can clear up big things really fast. Makes it so killing big single targets is no problem whatsoever for the Zhukovs, especially if you want to take the electricity in tier 5 and you have the IFG as well. You just get even more damage from this. This does work with blow-through rounds too. You can actually stick this through multiple enemies, but usually ammo is just a better option. Embedded detonators is going to go right up into S tier because it is really, really good. Then we have gas recycling, which is probably one of my favorites for the Zhukovs. This one's really cool. This one makes it so you can no longer crit with the Zhukovs. You don't get extra weak spot damage at all anymore. You also are less accurate, and you can't move as quick with the Zhukovs as you otherwise would. But you do have armor shred on this, and this just rips right through anything, especially with blow-through rounds. This is probably one of the best secondaries for certain overclocks, like AI Stability Engine, or it can be really good for Super Cooling Chamber for the M1000, and it also buffs the damage for the Zhukovs heavily. So you can just clear through crowds of grunts super, super fast with gas recycling. And I'd put this one up into A tier. I think it's really good. Gas recycling is really great for melting down stingtails. Yeah, that's true. The armor breaking on it's really nice for that. It's really good for clearing up anything with armor, really. And like I said, it makes for like one of the best secondaries for like Super Cooling Chamber, because then you don't have to worry about dealing with groups of enemies nearly as much. The Zhukovs can take care of it. Alright, then we move on to the crossbow. And our very first overclock for the crossbow is Quickfire. Quickfire is kind of an interesting one. This gives you more velocity as well as a faster reload for the crossbow, which is a bonus. The crossbow benefits heavily from both of those. It's just it's not a crazy bonus either for the crossbow. Not one that I use super often. I'm going to put it into B tier though. It's nice. Then we've got the Specialist. The Specialist makes it so you get more special arrows. Depending on what special arrows you like, that's just a bonus. You can have more pheromone bolts, more electricity bolts, more explosive bolts. It's pretty good. It's a pretty solid overclock. This one's going to go right up into A tier. It's very, very nice for the crossbow. Special bolts are definitely one of the high points of the crossbow, one of the selling points for it. Then we have... okay, Cryo is up next. Then we have the cryo bolts, and cryo bolts are pretty awesome. This makes it so you can no longer retrieve your bolts if you miss, but the cryo bolts will stick into an enemy or stick into the ground and then deal cold damage to everything around it, so you can freeze enemies from this. That's really strong. This makes it very easy to freeze big targets, especially if you take it with the pheromone bolt. You stick a pheromone bolt into something big, you shoot a cryo bolt into it, everything swarms around it, everything gets frozen, you can just clear it up super quick with your primary weapon. Or your team can. It's really good. So Cryo Bolt, gonna go up into S tier. I think it's one of the best bolts in the game for this. Then we also have Fire Bolts, which work the exact same way as Cryo Bolts, where you technically get nerf damage, but you can now fire this and light enemies on fire. Fire's really good for crowds, less good for big targets. Can still be decent to big targets, just not like dreadnoughts. So yeah, this one's also really good. This one's also gonna go up into S tier. I think it's lower than Cryo, just because it's not as flexible, but if you're just doing like Swarmageddon or something, then Firebolts are better. Or if you're just fighting large groups of regular grunts, then Firebolts is also better. It's so versatile. Both of them are really versatile. The crossbow in general is very versatile. I really like Firebolts. Yeah, Firebolts are awesome. Firebolts and Cryobolts are really awesome, either way. Then we've got one of my favorite overclocks in the entire game, which is Bodkin Points. And Bodkin Points is really cool. This one nerfs your damage for your crossbow bolts, and you can no longer retrieve them. Or no, you can't. You can retrieve your bolts from this, but your bolts now bounce into enemies if you hit another enemy. If you build this for damage, it can actually be pretty good for the grunt clear. And this one does kind of fall off the more enemies there are on the map, but it is still really good for hitting multiple enemies. It's also really good for triggering multiple stuns, because the crossbow has a very high chance of stunning enemies. So it is super, super fun. It's one of the most fun overclocks in the game, in my opinion. Maybe not one of the strongest, though. And I'd put the Bodkin Points into A tier. Just for me. Like, the Bodkin Points are so much fun. I have noticed on, like, modded difficulties, though, Bodkin Points kind of fall off. To where there's just so many bugs, and just killing, like, 3 at a time isn't as good as killing more enemies per shot with something like the Fire Bolt or the Ice Bolt. Do fair cryo bolts deal with swarmers too? Yeah, that's true. They can. My brother just got gas recycling and he's using it nonstop. Awesome. Gas recycling is really good. Occasionally I'll try using the IFG, but sometimes I forget I have the IFG and I just try to throw it like a boomerang. Yeah, that can be an issue too. All right, and then our last scout overclock is the Trifork Volley. This is also for the crossbow, and this lets you fire out 3 bolts at the same time. These do less damage, but you have more of them than you normally would. These also deal a lot of burst damage, and these ones are really good if you take the electricity bolts and you just stack these with the magnetic shaft so that you can always hit something that's being electrocuted. This deals really high burst damage. It's very similar to something like jumbo shells or embedded detonators, and it's really good. Like I said, if you stack the electricity bolts on something, you can slow it down. Then you fire this into it, deal massive damage to it, and repeat. That's really good. It does get a little bit more awkward at longer ranges, though, if you don't have the electricity bolts already stuck into something and you're just trying to hit, because these will spread out further. So close range is definitely your friend with this one. I'm still going to put the Trifork Volley up into A tier, though. I don't think it's quite as good as jumbo shells or embedded detonators for like the same type of job that they're doing. But it is still really fun, and if you really like the crossbow, if you really want to take electricity bolts or pheromone bolts, I mean, those already have a lot of value in and of themselves, so I could totally understand wanting to pick this over the other options. Very good. For me, I'm all about Trifork Volley. Bodkin Points hit 3 enemies, I shoot 1, and I shoot 3 rounds. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I was gonna say, I like IFGs just because the effect looks really cool. Yeah, that's true. They do. Pheromones. That is true, Joey. I mean, the dwarfs even comment on that. IFG wins Prettiest Nade Award? Probably. And then, like, most exciting award would either go to, like, the gun grenade or the saw blades. You never know what might happen. Just chuck it and see. Alright, now we gotta set up Driller stuff, and Driller's first one is Flamethrower with lighter tanks. So, I don't think any of these got changed. So I shouldn't have to, like, edit in another one of these. At least I don't think so. Let's see, Subata Sludge, Sticky Fuel needs to go up here, Cryo needs to go up here, Sludge also. Cryo as well. Cryo as well. Don't know in which order those are, but we'll figure it out as we go along. I'm just trying to set all these up. That's face melter. What are the other ones? There's sticky additive and there's something else. Yeah, there's sticky additive and... Oh, that's right. Fuel stream diffuser. That's the other one. I guess snowball got changed, but I mean, none of these actually got changed on the... like the actual icons. At least not for a while. Let's see. Sludge also up there. Sludge here. More cryo cannon stuff. Okay, yeah, I was like, I don't know if I put Ice Spear up there. Yeah, I think we have all that. Sabata. Guess these EPC ones should be moved over here, and the Wave Cooker one should be down here. More Sabata stuff. More of that there. Cluster grenade for the scout magnet, I swear. Can be. Boomstick is pure cowboy. Yeah. Boomstick's really cool. I like the boomstick a lot. It's probably one of my favorite weapons overall. Which is kind of funny because it's like, yeah, the boomstick just, for whatever reason, fits really well into like sci-fi, fantasy, anything. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just because it looks iconic. Like, kind of in its own way. Alright. There we go. We have drillers all set up then. Our list is becoming pretty chunky now. I think the actual worst grenade is the fire grenade, because like I always set myself and team on fire trying to use it. yeah, that can be true. I don't know what I would consider like the worst grenade in the game, because they're all kind of good in their own situation. Like I probably wouldn't consider any of Scout's grenades the worst. I probably wouldn't consider, like, gunners are pretty basic, so it's kind of hard to consider them like the worst because they're just the easiest to get used to. Plasma bursters worse? Yeah, for me personally they might be, because I blow myself up with them pretty often. I mean, in my opinion, new mods are a step in the right direction, but non-electricity builds for stubby still aren't great. Yeah, I mean, having armor breaking on them is kind of nice, so that's cool. Solid blade grenade feels pretty bad. It can. It depends on the map. It's pretty decent on, like, escort missions. It's probably one of the more janky grenades to actually get to use, though. Sticky grenade's probably the worst in my opinion. I can understand that, too. The sticky grenade still has fear on it, though, and it still does decent damage. What's the current overtune list? I can't make out each one. Oh, neurotoxin payload, mine layer system, volatile bullets, hellfire, and special powder. Love the saw grenade for escort. Yeah, it's really cool there. Saw blade can't take out gas shrooms as well as the axes can. Yeah, but that's not really fair to compare things to the axes. Axes are really good. They're still really good even after they got nerfed. Saws aren't satisfying like the axes are? I guess it depends. They can be kind of satisfying to watch, but they're not as satisfying as to, like, throw. Like, long-range axe throws are a lot more satisfying than just throwing the saw blade and hitting something at range, but it is fun to watch the saw blade just go around in circles. Or if you can get it stuck on, like, the pipe and just have it spin around the pipe. That's pretty cool, too. Alright, moving on to Driller. And our very first overclock that we got is lighter tanks for the Crisper, which is probably one of the most basic overclocks in the game, which just gives you more fuel for the flamethrower. Cool. That's good for the flamethrower. It's an A tier. Flamethrower loves ammo. Flamethrower has a bunch of ammo. Flamethrower is like the one weapon that I kind of have a problem with overclocks. Not in terms of them being bad, because they're all actually quite good, It's just that they're all very basic, and I wish that we would get some other ones. I say this like every time I do a tier list or every time I talk about the flamethrower, is that it's very basic. It's very good, but it's very basic. And then we have sticky additive, which is our other clean overclock. This one makes it so sticky fuels last a little bit longer, and they do a little bit more damage while they're on the ground, which is pretty good. If you want to build more sticky fuel, then this one is a nice bonus. It's just that this one does get outcompeted by like sticky fuel. So sticky additive, I would say, is a B tier as well. It's perfectly fine. It's a nice overclock, but nothing too crazy. You all have a fantastic stream. I'm going to go rest for a bit. All right, Joshua. Hey, take care. Wasting the axes, by the way. You're right, with flamethrowers overclocks, they're just kind of boring. Yeah, I wish there was something else. I like Cass's version of just it being like a jet engine that has like no damage but just builds up heat really fast. That'd be really cool. Turning into like a melt-a-gun from the 40k universe where it's basically like a fire shotgun, I think would also be really cool. Fireballs would be another one, or magma or something. Just something that changes it. Rocket flamethrower overclock win. Yeah, exactly. It's like, there's nothing wrong with the flamethrower overclocks other than that they're kind of basic. You always just have flamethrower on them. That's not to say that they're not good though, because they are. They're all actually really good. Yeah, make it a fire, make it shoot fireballs like the autocannon. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. Then we've got the, do we have this one up next? Yeah, then we've got compact feed valves, which is a very good balanced overclock. This one makes it so you have slightly shorter range, but that doesn't matter if you take the range add-on in tier 1, then you're fine. You actually have even longer range. You have a larger tank size with this, and you just have more ammo with it overall. This one's really good and probably one of the best for the flamethrower, just overall at everything. And if you just want something very solid, then this one is a really, really good option. So I would put compact feed valves up into A tier. It's very nice. Still kind of basic, but still very nice. Then we got fuel stream diffuser. One of my absolute favorite overclocks for the flamethrower. And one that does kind of change the way the flamethrower works, because you have even longer reach of the flamethrower. You have less flow rate, which doesn't really matter with a flamethrower. It just makes it so you're going to go through ammo slower, and you won't have quite as much DPS on direct fire, but you can build up heat with this really quick. This one is really good for taking out turrets. You can burn turrets on the ceiling. It's super fun to take this with all range and have 20 meters of flame reach. This one is honestly like one of the best for the flamethrower. I'm going to put it up into A tier. I think it's a very solid overclock and a very good one. I really, really like it. Then we've got... do we actually have sticky fuel up next? Oh no, we got face melter next. Then we've got Face Melter, which is a pretty interesting overclock. Face Melter makes so you get a lot more direct damage with the flamethrower. However, you have a lot less reach and a lot less tank size. So you can run through ammo with this kind of quick. It only works at very close range, which can be kind of bad because enemies can hit you in return. This is technically like the best flamethrower overclock for dealing with dreadnoughts, but that's not saying a whole lot since the flamethrower is just not really good at dealing with dreadnoughts. And the cryo cannon or the sludge pump would be better options than this. This one can still clear through big targets pretty quickly, though, and pretty efficiently. So I'm going to put this one... the more I use this, honestly, the less I actually like it over some of the other ones. I'm going to put this one actually into B tier. I think Face Melter does kind of have a place, but I don't think it's as good as it could be. If it just didn't have a shorter reach, it would be better. Honestly, that would be like the only change that I would want for it. Because like with it currently... how it works now, it's like the tank size, I usually take over the reach, but it still makes it feel a little bit awkward. It's super fun to use, though. It's very fun to just melt things super quick with the face melter, so... totally depends. Sticky fuel, baby, yeah. Then we've got sticky fuel, which is the last overclock for the flamethrower. This one's pretty awesome. This one makes so we have less ammo overall and less tank size. You can make up for both those, but you have much longer sticky flame duration and more damage over time for it, which is really good. That makes it really good for clearing up crowds. It's one of the best, if not the best, for the flamethrower for clearing up crowds, besides maybe like compact feed valves, or you could argue fuel stream diffuser if you want to be using it at very long range. Sticky fuel's really, really solid though. I'd put this one up into S tier. It's very nice for the flamethrower. Didn't love Face Melter on Dreads. Direct damage flamethrower just doesn't feel great in my opinion. Yeah, it's really not that great against Dreads. Like if I get in a randomizer build, that's what I want for a Dread build, but I'm not going to take it for that. I'll take the Sludge Pump or the Cryo over that if I know that there's Dreadnoughts. And even something like compact feed valves or fuel stream diffuser still works okay enough if I get it in like a deep dive or something. But I don't know. It does clear up things quickly. It's kind of awkward when there's a bunch of enemies right on top of you. I feel like Face Melter didn't light things on fire, but had even higher damage increase, so it literally just melts. I feel would be a lot better. Yeah, that would be kind of cool. And like, it is one of the few weapons that can take advantage of the what's that other ability? Not the Flame Radiance, but the one that can burst things. That one can actually be pretty good then, because then you at least have some crowd control thanks to that. Do you find the lack of ammo for the sticky fuel rather annoying? Not so much, because the duration on it's pretty good. Like having the 11 seconds of flame is pretty good. You just kind of spray that around, then just kind of run back and forth through it as things follow you. It just depends on how you want to use it. If you do find it annoying, then like compact feed valves is probably something better for you. Jetpack flamethrower, firing it launches you backward, giving driller vertical mobility, but damage is dramatically reduced. Yeah, you could do that. Alright, then we have the cryo cannon. And very first up, we have improved thermal efficiency, which this one is a clean overclock. That's very nice for the cryo cannon. This one makes it so you just get more ammo for the cryo cannon, and you have less pressure drop rate. That's pretty good. That's two things that the cryo cannon absolutely loves, and I'm going to put this one actually up into A tier. I think it's really good for the cryo. Then we've got, what's our next one actually? Oh, okay. Then we've got Tuned Cooler, which Tuned Cooler is kind of in an awkward spot right now. It's decent, but there's better ways of freezing things than what Tuned Cooler gives you. This gives you more freezing power and better flow rate, but it makes it so your charge up time is slower and your pressure gain rate is worse. So you can overheat your gun a little bit easier. Freezing things at a distance works a little bit better for this, so it can be pretty good on like Macterra Plague missions. The fastest way to freeze things is to use Cold Radiance though, so that does help a bit more, and it makes it so Tuned Cooler doesn't work as well as some other options. It's by no means a bad option though. I would put this one into B tier. Like I said, it can be good for freezing distant targets like Macterra, so it has something going for it. Then we have the flow rate expansion, which is probably the weirdest overclock for the cryo cannon. This makes it so you have much better pressure gain rate, but you also drop pressure faster, but you can freeze things quicker, but you can overheat the gun faster, basically. And that is pretty awkward in and of itself, but it can be pretty good too. I don't know, I flip-flop on this one a lot, because some matches it feels amazing, other matches it feels kind of meh. It's decent overall, but it's probably the weakest of the cryo cannon overclocks, and I'd put this one into C tier. It's fine, but not way crazy. Calling it overheat on the cryo cannon feels weird. Yeah, but same with like the pressure drop rate sounds weird to me too. Just overheating, I feel like people understand more like, oh, it overheats and then you can't use it. Then we have Ice Spear, which Ice Spear is pretty cool. Ice Spear makes it so if you hit your reload button, you'll charge up an Ice Spear and fire this out. This does really high damage on hit, to anything really. You can actually one-shot like even the twins with this, which is pretty funny. If you combine this with Blistering Necrosis, you put a blister on them and then you shoot it, and it can one-shot a lot of stuff that way. It's difficult to do, but you can do it. You can also freeze enemies and fire this. You just have to get the timing down right so that you can freeze something and then shoot the Ice Spear into them and deal really high damage. When you do fire the Ice Spear, it does make it so your gun has to overheat for another second before it starts to repressurize. And that can be slightly annoying, but it doesn't actually come with any other downsides than that. So if you build it for all ammo, it's not bad at all. I'd put Ice Spear up into A tier. I think it's pretty good, especially if you want to snipe off like menaces. It's one of your best for doing that because it can one-shot them if you hit them in the weak spot. Then we have Ice Storm. Ice Storm is a pretty awesome overclock. This is basically Face Melter, but for the cryo cannon, which I think is a lot better for the cryo cannon because ice just can do more damage. This makes it so it takes longer to freeze enemies than it otherwise would, but it does make it so that when they are frozen, you deal double damage, and this also doubles your base damage. So you can do up to 4 times the amount of damage to enemies that are frozen, which is really cool. And this also goes for like the damage overclock in tier 4, where that gives you more damage, and that makes it so the base damage is even higher since it's getting doubled and then doubled again. So Cryo Cannon Ice Storm, really, really good. I would put this one up in A tier. I think it's really awesome. The main downside, though, is that you can run through ammo with it fairly quick, and it does nerf your ammo. So you want to stack ammo, or at least you want to take one ammo in probably tier 2. You could take ammo in tier 2 and 4, but I honestly like the damage a whole lot more, so we can get more burst damage out of this and more consistent damage. And then our last overclock for the Cryo Cannon is Snowball, which this one did get changed. This one now has Lingering Cold on it, which is pretty cool. You use this one the same way you use Ice Spear, so you hit your reload, this charges up a Snowball, it fires out, takes up some of your ammo. The ammo actually got better too, so it no longer takes up 35 of your ammo anymore, it only takes up 25, which is really good. You can use it even more often. This does nerf your overall ammo though, which is kind of annoying. And then when the Snowball hits, it can freeze all enemies around it, and it can also do Lingering Frost. So it will still continue to freeze enemies so long as they stand there, which they more than likely will. It's really good against Magterra. It's probably like S tier on a Magterra Plague mission, because you can just one-shot an entire crowd of them. On regular missions, though, I would say this one's A tier. I think it's pretty good overall. Ice Storm is fantastic for Dreads. It absolutely is, yeah. One-shot menace eliminated. Yep. It's a weird overclock. You do more to frozen bugs, but you don't freeze them as fast. Yeah, you usually want to get close, and then you want to be having like cold radiance work so that you can freeze them quicker just from cold radiance actually working, and then kill them with Ice Storm. It is kind of awkward to use though. I will say that. It does feel strange. What tier list are you doing for this? Can't find it? What tier list am I doing? Like on Tier Maker, or do you just mean like overall? Because I'm doing all of the overclocks in Deep Rock, an update to them. This one is, what is this one's name? Oh, 148 overclocks on Deep Rock Galactic and a Tier Maker. This one's by Fate Snowing. So shout out to Fate again. Thanks for letting me use your tier list. I like the way that it looks. I like the color coordination on there so that it makes it a little bit easier for people to see like which overclocks are where. In Wasting Lazy Maybe's video, putting Sticky Fuel in A tier, which shocked me. I mean, you can run through ammo with it kind of quick, and they were doing it more for like modded difficulties. And in that role, I can understand, because something like Hellfire's technically better in that type of role. Hey, Ron, hey, chat. Hey, Cass, how's it going? How are you doing? Considering how much they hype it up and talk about modded? Okay. I mean, it is really good in that. But like I said, I think like Hellfire kind of accomplishes the same job, just faster. So, depends. Great, how are you? I'm doing good. I'm starting to lose my voice as I figured I would, because I'm only halfway through, well, a little bit more than halfway through the tier list. And I've been talking about all the overclocks. Alright, so up next we've got the Sludge Pump overclocks, and our very first one is the Hydrogen Ion Additive, and this one I can't really tell if it's doing anything more for the Sludge Pump. It's technically a bonus to the Sludge Pump, but I don't notice it very much. More damage is nice, so B tier, I think it's perfectly fine. Then we've got AG Mixture. AG Mixture is one of my favorites for the Sludge Pump. It is so much fun to take this with the extra velocity. This one makes it so your Sludge Pump no longer is affected by gravity in the same way. So you can potentially fire this further than you otherwise would, and you can aim it a lot more straight. This isn't necessarily overpowered or anything for the Sludge Pump, but it does make it feel just very consistent at any range, and that's super nice. So I'm going to put this into B tier as well. Another nice overclock. Love AG Mixture. Yeah, AG Mixture is awesome. I can only hang out for a bit, spending the day with my girlfriend, but wanted to pop into chat for a little while before I pick her up. Oh, awesome, Cass. I hope you guys have an awesome day. Got Hellfire last week, and my God Gunner became my main because then it was so good. Yeah, Hellfire's nice, even though it got nerfed technically. It still just clears up crowds super, super quick, so it's really nice in that role. Then, let's see, which one do we have next? Okay, Volatile Impact Mixture. Volatile Impact Mixture is awesome for the Sludge Pump. This lets you have much more consistent damage with the Sludge Pump on regular shots, and that's kind of all you need with it. It's really good for killing Dreadnoughts. It's really good for killing regular Grunts. Makes it so just standard shots from the Sludge Pump are very effective. And yeah, I'm gonna put this one up into S tier. I love this thing. It's really good. I wouldn't say it's overtuned like some of these other ones, but it's just very solid all the way around. And then we've got Disperser Compound, which is another very, very solid overclock for the Sludge Pump, which makes it so that you can have more AoE, just everything for the Sludge Pump. So if you want more AoE, more slowdowns, more damage over time, more area covered, fire on top of this works really well with it. It's fantastic for just clearing up things that way. And I would also put this one right up into S tier with our Sludge or Volatile Impact mixture. These two are like the two that I use the most for the Sludge Pump, and they are very, very good. And then we've got... Is that Sludge Blast? No, that's Goo Bomber. Alright. Then we've got Goo Bomber Special next. Goo Bomber Special is kind of a weird one. This one can be kind of fun. You charge up your shot and it fires out like how the Goo Bombers fly over and spit down their goo. It can cover an area. This one can be pretty good on like holdout missions, like black box missions. It can be really good on escort missions where you can just keep putting this behind you and have enemies walk through it. It can be pretty decent with fire on it. It is going to be kind of awkward to use in a lot of situations though. And if this hits something directly, then it basically just stops. So you want to be shooting this over something and then potentially landing on something else. That's usually the best way to use it, and that does make it a little bit weird to use, but I'm going to put Goo Bomber Special up in a B tier. I think it still has some niche use to it, so that's kind of nice. And then we've got Sludge Blast, which Sludge Blast kind of technically got buffed, I think, since the last time we talked about this. It no longer has as bad ammo economy as it used to. It does really high burst damage. It's really good for clearing up oppressors, and it's really good for dreadnoughts. It can also just be super fun to use. That's only on the regular shot does it fire a shotgun shot out, on the charge shot it fires out a shotgun shot. On regular shots it's still the same. You do have a nerf in ammo, which kind of sucks for this, but I do like this one a lot, and on certain missions it can be pretty good. Other missions it's kind of okay. I think I'm going to put Sludge Blast up into A tier because it does shine really well on like Dreadnought missions and on rival presence, or not necessarily rival presence missions, but industrial sabotage missions. It can actually be really good for taking out the robots. Main problem is just like ammo economy. You can still go through ammo with it super quick, so I don't think it's as good as Volatile Impact for most situations that you kind of want the same thing, and it's also not as good as like Disperser Compound for just clearing up more crowds. Pretty decent though. Alright, then we gotta move on to the Sabata. The Dreadnought Destroyer, yeah, it's really good for dreads. It's really good for dreads. It's really good for the Caretaker because you don't need to be super accurate. And it doesn't matter if it's focusing you. You can just keep walking backwards and shotgunning it until it's dead. It's just you might run out of shotgun blasts eventually, and that kind of sucks. And you could do the same thing with Volatile Impact, and you just have more ammo overall, so you're probably not hurting for it as bad afterwards. It's like it doesn't do that job as well, but it's still a super fun and super unique overclock. Alright, moving on to the Sabata, we got Chain Hit. This is the same as Chain Hit for the Bulldog, but it's for the Sabata, which I think makes it kind of worse. And it's not really one of my favorite overclocks. This one just makes it so when you hit weak spots, there is a chance that your bullet will then bounce to another nearby enemy, which is fine. It's technically a bonus for the Sabata, but it's not one that I really enjoy. And I'm going to put this one into C tier. I don't think it's that great. Then we've got the Homebrew Powder, which works the same way as the GK2's Homebrew Powder, but Homebrew Powder on the GK2 does feel a bit better just because of the weapon. It doesn't feel that great on the Sabata. This randomizes your damage between 80% and 140%. You're technically getting 10% bonus damage on it, which is kind of nice, but it's still not really enough for the Sabata, so I would also put this one into C tier. It's fine. If it's the only overclock you got, throw it on there. If not, I would really prefer using it over some of the other ones. Then we've got Oversized Magazine, which is a decent one for the Sabata. This lessens your reload speed, which kind of sucks, but it does give you more ammo in the gun. That's kind of cool. You can actually stack a lot of bullets with this, and it can feel pretty decent. It's still not amazing by any means, but it's okay. So B tier. Maybe the Sabata just doesn't feel that good on its own. Yeah, that's kind of true. The Sabata is fine. It's kind of fine at everything, but not as strong as some other options. with some exceptions, because like explosive reload, Sabata does actually feel pretty good, especially in like escort missions. But I don't know. Even after they reworked it, it still has some issues. And I'm not sure what they would really want to change about it to make it a bit better. So I'm not a fan of driller secondaries. I can understand that. Our next overclock is the automatic fire, which this one is super fun for the Sabata. This just turns it into a submachine gun. This one gives you a higher rate of fire, and it makes it so you have more recoil from the gun. Doesn't really change anything else about it too much. It's still pretty decent then, and it's probably like the best quality of life overclock for the Sabata overall, but it's still not super strong just because it is on the Sabata. So I think B tier is fair, although it's probably A or S tier in terms of fun. It is really cool in that role. Now we've got explosive reload, which this one is probably the best overclock for the Sabata currently. This one functions the same way embedded detonators works for the Zhukovs, but it's just on the Sabata. So you stick detonators into a target, you reload, it explodes, deals damage to that target, nerfs your damage, but that doesn't really matter. Or doesn't nerf your damage? Hold on, let me check this real quick. I always forget about this one. No, it doesn't nerf your damage. This one nerfs your magazine size and your overall ammo. So stacking ammo with this makes sense because a lot of your damage is going to be coming from the explosives. This one can be really good against flying rocks. It can be pretty nice in other roles. It can be pretty decent for picking off things like Mactera. It can be pretty decent for picking off menaces. It's a decent overclock for the Sabata, and I think I'd put this one into A tier. I think it's pretty good then. And then we have the tranquilizer rounds, which this one is always kind of awkward. This one technically got buffed a little bit with all the changes that the Sabata got, but it still feels very strange to use. So the tranquilizer rounds can stun enemies, and they stun enemies for the second longest in the game at 6 seconds, which is only rivaled by the boomerang. That's pretty decent. However, that's kind of all you're getting with the tranquilizer rounds. You do lose mag size with this, and that doesn't really matter because the stuns are okay. It's also slower to shoot this, which is also okay. And I don't know, tranquilizer rounds just feels kind of awkward because driller doesn't really need the slowdowns or the stuns when you can freeze things and when all of your primary weapons already either slow things down or freeze them solid. So this one is okay for dealing with like Trijaws to stun lock them, but even then you can just throw like an axe at them and kill them that way. So tranquilizer rounds is also going to go to like C tier. I just don't use it super often. It has some roles, but it feels awkward. Gotta head out, Ron. Appreciate the stream. Definitely watch this back though. Oh yeah, I'm going to make this into a full video too. So it'll be more edited down and it won't be like 3 hours like it looks like it's going to be. Auto fire for the Sabata is my favorite of the overclocks. Yeah, I understand that. It's probably my favorite too. It feels super nice. Sabata needs a 1911 45 ACP overclock that reduces mag size, increases recoil, and adds more damage and stun. Sure, why not? That'd be interesting. The new Sludge Bump mod with full auto deletes big things? Yeah, it can. That's kind of nice. Hey, Urza. How are you doing? Hope you're doing well. All right. Oh, did the music actually? I think we might have hit the end of the playlist. Yeah, it looks like it. Let's just go with the next one. I'm going to be surprised in like 4 or 5 songs down, since we're going to have more lyric songs. Oh well, doesn't matter. Next up, we have the EPC. And our very first one for the EPC is energy rerouting. And energy rerouting is really good. It is a clean overclock, but it is a very nice clean overclock for the EPC. This just gets you more ammo and a faster charge speed. And the EPC loves that. Like, any build works really well with this, and this is super, super flexible. This one I would put... I'm actually going to put this one into S tier. This one is one of the best for the EPC. Even though it's a slight ammo increase and just the faster charge speed, it makes it so any build is even more viable than it already is with the EPC. And it just feels super solid. If you want to build it for fire, you can. If you want to build it for thin containment field, you can. That's what the build is that I'm showing on screen. But any of them work really, really well. Yeah, we're getting to the point where I'm going to have to start scrolling up and down a little bit more. All right, then we've got magnetic cooling unit, which magnetic cooling unit is honestly a pretty good overclock if you're just getting used to EPC mining. It's really good in that role. It's just that it falls out of favor compared to other energy or other thermal... No. Just just that it falls out of favor compared to the other thin containment filled overclocks, where it doesn't really do anything that they can do any better. It just makes it so that it's super, super easy for you to actually use thin containment filled, since it makes it so overheating is even harder to do, and it gives you a bigger window of opportunity to use it. So I'm going to put this one actually into C tier because it's just not as good as some of the other ones. Energy rerouting is better for this. Heat pipe can be better for this. The persistent plasma can be better for this. And then if you're using it for any other role, like heavy hitter can be better for this too. It's just very awkward to use. Well, it's not very awkward to use. It's very easy to use. It's just, it doesn't do the jobs as well as the other ones. The training wheels overclock, yes. That's a very, very good way of putting it. This is the training wheels overclock, where it's like, if you get it right away, super cool. And if you want to learn how to EPC mine, it's going to be the easiest one for you to learn from. But if you're already very used to EPC mining or just using thin containment field in general, it doesn't really matter that much. Will you put this on YouTube? Yep. This is going to be edited down into a YouTube video. That'll be out later this week, I believe. Right now I'm streaming it on YouTube and on Twitch, though. And we're just kind of doing this live with all the different things, because I've set up all the builds and stuff that I would recommend for them, or just some of the ones that I'd recommend. Rock and stone, rock and stone. Yeah, and then if somebody wants to watch like the full stream, they can. But the full stream, like I said, it's probably going to be like 3 hours of this. And then, you know, the edited video of this is probably going to be like an hour, hour and a half or something, I imagine. Just because I'll cut out like all these talking segments of it and just keep it to where it's like, it's the builds, it's the overclocks, and maybe include a couple other things in there. So, but yeah, it should be up sometime later this week. I'll probably get working on it maybe later today or tomorrow, honestly. Depends. Depends what I've got planned. Alright, next one is heat pipe. And heat pipe for the EPC is one of my favorites. It's super fun, although it's very difficult to use. This gets you the most ammo efficient shots for the EPC with its charge shots, but you can overheat the EPC much faster than you would otherwise. It also has the fastest charge out of any of them too, so you can use this the quickest. It doesn't make it awkward to do multiple EPC charge shots though, because it's very easy to overheat your gun even if you are good with it. So it's still an awkward overclock, but I really enjoy this one. I'm going to put it B tier though. I don't think it's as strong as some of the other options we've got. I was a minute behind somehow. Happens. Yeah, it could just be from the buffering. Totally just depends. Then we've got heavy hitter. Heavy hitter is the overclock that you take if you just want to use the plasma pistol as a standard plasma pistol like from other games. It's really strong. It makes it so you get more damage per shot out of your regular shots, although you have less ammo. Not a huge deal though. You can also build up fire with this super quick. If you build more damage on it, you can build up the fire even quicker. So you can put fire on like your sludge in 2 shots, which is pretty awesome from this. Makes it so just firing this at turrets lights them on fire really quick. And like heavy hitter's awesome. Heavy hitter, I would say, is an easy A tier. It's really good. Then we have overcharger, which has always kind of been an awkward overclock because it doesn't work very well as a thin containment filled option. It works best, in my opinion, as a fire build and just shooting this across like your sludge. It can work really well then. It does take extra ammo to use this. It does take longer to charge this up, but your charge shots do more damage, and with fire, that is kind of nice. So overcharger, I'm going to say, is like B tier. It does kind of have a niche now, since we have Burning Nightmare on the EPC, but it's not as strong as some of the other options we've got. And speaking of some of the strong options we've got Persistent Plasma here, which is very strong. This nerfs your damage and your charge shot damage, both regular and charge shot. But it does make it so once your EPC shot hits, that's a charge shot, it will explode and then put plasma all around the area. And this deals damage to everything in it and slows everything down. This is really good. This one I'm going to say is S tier. It's one of the best ones for the EPC. It's really nice for all the crowd control that it gives you, and it's super flexible in any way that you want to build it. Even with like Burning Nightmare, you can still use this to have it explode, but you do need to be aiming for surfaces then rather than just enemies. So it does get a little bit awkward in that role. I usually just run it for the thin containment field, and it's really good in that role too. All right, then we've got the wave cooker. And first up, we've got liquid cooling system. And liquid cooling system is just like how a lot of these type of overclocks are. just all the liquid cooling systems in any of these weapons. They're a nice quality of life bonus to the weapon, but don't change it super. Well, don't change it very much at all. This one makes so you have less heat generation, better cooling rate, less overheat duration. Cool, that's nice. Nothing super crazy about this, and it's one that I don't use too often, but I'll put this like B tier. It's perfectly fine. Then we've got the super focus lens, which makes it so you deal more damage when enemies are within 4 meters of you, which is kind of cool, although your primary weapons are better at that range. This is okay though if you slow them down with like the sludge and then you're using this, or you slow them down with sticky fuel and then you use this. It can actually be decent then, but it's still not one that I use that often with the microwave gun. The microwave gun doesn't do a whole lot of damage. It's mostly that you're using it for its other effects to like either stack multiple status effects or to trigger status effects with the yeah, what's it called now? With the thermal shock. Nothing beats accidentally irradiating scout with gamma contamination. I think it's one of the more useful cooling overclocks. It can be, yeah. Although you're not usually, well, at least if you're using like thermal shock driller, you're not usually using it super often. Like you usually just pull it out, wave it across like a crowd, kill some stuff, and then like put it away. So you don't usually have to worry about it overheating. Can be useful for picking off like web spitters though. Yeah, super focus lens, I think I'm going to put into C tier. I don't think it's one of the stronger ones for the EP or for the wave cooker, but it's okay. Then we've got diffusion ray. Diffusion ray makes it so you can pierce through multiple enemies, which is interesting in and of itself, and it makes it so you can trigger thermal shock a little bit easier if you have multiple enemies in a row that are being affected by it. You also slow down enemies upon hit, which can be kind of cool too. Although you do nerf your damage. Damage nerf doesn't matter that much though for the wave cooker, because if you're using it for like thermal shock, who cares? You just want to trigger that and deal the damage that way. And piercing enemies is nice, slowing enemies is nice. This one I'm gonna say is B tier as well, although it's high end of B tier, maybe low A tier. It's pretty good for what it does. Then we've got, is this Mega Power Supply next? Yeah. And then we've got Mega Power Supply, which this one's probably one of the best for the wave cooker. This one gets you more ammo and it gets you a faster rate of fire, but it makes so if you do overheat this, your overheat duration is worse. If you don't overheat this, then this is just a straight bonus to your weapon. It works really well no matter how you want to build it. It works really well in a thermal shock build, and that's usually the way I'm running it. I'd put this one A tier. It's very nice to have. Makes so you're just not running through ammo as quickly. Then we have blistering necrosis, which is probably one of the coolest ones for the EP or for the wave cooker. I keep saying EPC. This one makes so you can put blisters on an enemy. Those blisters, when they pop, deal extra damage to an enemy. We talked about this with Ice Spear briefly, where if you shoot a blister with Ice Spear, you're basically going to one-shot anything because it creates another weak spot on them. And yeah, blistering necrosis is really cool. It's really cool by itself too. If you want to take it with Boiler Ray, it actually works really well for crowd control then. It's probably one of the better overclocks for the wave cooker. And I'm going to put this one, I think I'll put this one A tier. I think it's pretty good. I don't know if I'd put it into S tier. I could see some people picking S tier for it though. How strong is the triple dot sludge pump gamma contamination build? I wouldn't say it's super strong, but it is very fun. And it does slow things down pretty quick. Do blisters work on robots? No, they don't. Or wait, do they? I don't think they work on regular robots, but they might work on Nemesis. But I've never seen blisters on like a turret. But I feel like I've seen them on Nemesis, so maybe it works on Nemesis? It might work on the Prospector then too. It doesn't work on the Caretaker. I don't, no, he doesn't? I'm like completely blanking. I was thinking maybe I have seen him on like the eye of the Caretaker. That is a good question, Music Mike. I'm actually not entirely 100% sure. I don't think it works on all the robots, but it might work on some of them. It definitely works on all the bugs. Because I imagine Ice Spear blistering on the Caretaker's eye. Yeah. I was like, maybe I've seen that and people throw axes at it, but maybe not. Maybe I'm just thinking of like the axes sticking in. Yeah, I could be wrong about that. I feel like it might work on Nemesis though. And maybe the Prospector as well for that same reason. but I don't recall if I've seen it on the Caretaker or not, and I don't think I've seen it on any of the other robots like turrets or the flying ones. Anyway, let's move on to the next one, which is Gamma Contamination. Gamma Contamination makes so you can put a radiation on enemies, and this deals damage over time. It actually deals a lot of damage over time to those enemies, although it does have a small chance of triggering, and that can be kind of annoying. This one can be decent for bugs. It can be decent for just putting multiple status effects on enemies. It's really fun with the sludge pump, to where you can put this plus neurotoxin plus the sludge on stuff, and then you can light the sludge on fire and have even more status effects on it. It's super fun in that role, but it is a little bit underwhelming because sometimes it doesn't trigger super often. So I'd put this one into B tier. On a good day, it's probably like A tier. On a bad day, it's probably B tier because it doesn't always trigger super often. And that will update our list for all the ones for Driller. Now we got to sort all the ones for Inji. So let's get all of, and then we've got our 2 other ones down here that just don't go anywhere. Let's see. I need Stunner, Mini Shells, Magnetic, Cycle Overload. That's the Breach Cutter one. That one's the Warthog one. So you put Stubbies here. It's really cool that those 2 got buffed. Those will be fun to talk about. So we can put the smart rifles up here too. Things for Stubby. Oh yeah, and roll control got changed quite a bit too. That'll be a fun one. There's that other one. Okay, need the grenade launchers over here too. Oh, that's the other one for the smart rifle. Like, I feel like we're missing one of those ones. We got all the ones for Stubby. We have all the ones for the smart rifle now. All right. See, Shard needs to be down here. This needs to be up here. Where is Fat Boy? There's Fat Boy. We will need to talk about that one. Alright, I think we got them in order then. Yeah, it looks that way. Alright. Overclockless Loki. Might as well just shoot one bullet at a time. It's still decent. Would you recommend a Loki overclockless ever? If you want longer range, sure, as your primary weapon. It's decent then. Just take that, like long range on it, blow through rounds, maybe electricity on it, and you got a decent enough weapon. And I think you could argue the shotgun or Stubby over it now for non-overclocked, but it would still be okay. Overclocks definitely buff it up quite a bit. My favorite overclock for the Shard Diffractor, Inferno for the Breach Cutter. Oh, did I put that one down there? Oh yeah, I did. You are right. It needs to be over there. Yeah, we would have got to it eventually. Alright, then last up we have Inji. So first up we have Stunner for Inji's Warthog. Stunner is an overclock that makes it so you're more likely to stun enemies and you get more damage when you stun enemies. That's pretty good. Even though I don't use this overclock very often, it's pretty nice to have. It can also be pretty good with Turret Whip, since you can stun them even more efficiently with that. And Stunner's pretty nice. Stunner, I would say, is solid A tier. It's pretty nice for the Warthog. Then our other clean overclock is Lightweight Magazines. This makes it so we have a faster reload and more ammo with the Warthog. Warthog benefits heavily from both of those. You can make this have an actually really fast reload, especially if you're okay with reload canceling this. Makes it so the Warthog just feels even more consistent than it already is. So another A tier, very good. Whoop, another A tier, very good overclock overall. And then we have our one balanced overclock, which is magnetic pellet alignment. This gives you more damage and a tighter shot with the Warthog than you otherwise would, but it has a slower rate of fire. That's not such a huge deal though. The damage that you get from this is really nice. It's really good for picking off things at a distance. It can be really good for picking off like turrets. It can be really good for picking off Mactera. The rate of fire bonus isn't such a huge deal a lot of the time, and I would say this one's like A tier. I think it's pretty good. Then we have then we got Cycle Overload. Cycle Overload is my favorite overclock for the Loki. This makes it so you can shoot much faster than you otherwise would, and you have more damage, but you're less accurate. So this is really, really fun for a full auto shotgun at very close range. Deals a lot of damage, can deal a lot of damage per second. You can run through ammo with it kind of quick. That is one kind of downside with this, but it is still pretty good, and I would put this one actually as S tier for the Warthog. I really enjoy it. It's probably the Warthog's best one, at least in my opinion. Then we have mini shells, and mini shells is not way great at the moment. So mini shells nerfs your damage, which hurts the Warthog quite a bit. You do get more shots with this, which is nice. It also nerfs your pellets too, and you also get less recoil per shot. So it's very easy to keep this on target, but it does feel awkward. If you have critical weakness, then mini shells is probably one of the best overclocks. But if you don't have that, then it is a little bit awkward to use in between shots. And I'm going to put this one actually into C tier because of that. It feels kind of awkward in a lot of rolls, and it doesn't kill super quick compared to the other ones. But still not terrible by any means, just a different way that you got to play it. Similar to like micro flechettes for the burst pistol. Also, mini shells cause you to lose the stun. That is true. It does. By the way, is it possible to build the Sabata to be a top tier weapon? I don't know. I guess it depends on what you're going for. Because like explosive reload on it's pretty good. And then if you wanted to pair it with like disperser compound, that's pretty nice. Just slow down everything and then use that to pick off certain things. Kind of depends. I mean, that build would probably get you through any mission. Like even if you wanted to play on Haz 5, which is what I'm more basing this off of. But like on modded difficulties, I'd say the Sabata kind of falls off compared to the other two options. But if you're just playing normal, it's perfectly fine. It's still pretty decent. And like full auto Sabata is still super fun to run, and that's something that I take all the time. Just no. Who knows, there might be changes in the future. Lightweight mags on the Warthog is so good. The pellets, yeah. It's really nice. I probably use that one the most, even though Cycle Overload is my favorite. And one that I would consider the strongest for just like burst damage. Like lightweight magazines I'm probably taking more often though. Alright, then we move on to Stubby, and Stubby got changed quite a bit recently, which is pretty cool. So first up, we've got Super Slim Rounds. This one makes it so Stubby is this one that makes it Stubby more accurate? Gotta check that real quick. Yeah, this is the one. Alright. So yeah, Super Slim Rounds makes it so Stubby is more accurate because it has less base spread, and it has more bullets. That's pretty good. With the bonuses that Stubby got, this one's actually kind of nice. I would put this one like B tier. It's perfectly fine. Oh, found another song with lyrics. Alright. Stubby got some love. Yeah, Stubby got some love, and it's actually pretty good now. That's pretty cool. Then we've got our next overclock, which is a clean one called Well-Oiled Machine. This one gives Stubby a better rate of fire, which is just really nice to have on Stubby in general. Submachine guns love that. And it has a faster reload, which Stubby already has a fairly quick reload. So this is another like B tier. It's nice. Not too much to say about it. It's just good. Then we've got the EM Refire Booster, which this one is probably my favorite Stubby overclock. This one's really cool. You get more damage, more electricity damage specifically. And then you also get a faster rate of fire for Stubby. However, you do have more base spread. Stubby's not that hard to control, and it's still fairly accurate out to longer ranges. I love using this just to spray down enemies. It's really nice to have in that role. And this one I'm going to put up into A tier. I think it's really good. Then we have Lightweight Rounds, which this one actually got buffed too inadvertently since Stubby got buffed. So now you can actually stack this with ammo plus rate of fire plus damage on it. And you're not really nerfing Stubby all that much because of that. And you still get a lot more bullets than you otherwise would. So this one is actually much better than it used to be. This one is probably one of Stubby's worst, and it still might not be necessarily one of Stubby's best, but I'm going to put this one B tier. I think it's actually really nice now that it has been changed from the latest patch. And especially since it got like armor breaking, that makes it feel pretty consistent too. If you want to take this as like a secondary with something like Fat Boy, it's actually not really a meme anymore, and it's pretty decent. Tertium discharge is easily overtuned, 2 busts especially since you lose. I mean, it did help with that buff. I'm probably actually not going to put it in the overtuned. I think it's still really good, but I don't think it necessarily does any. I think it's mostly just because of the setup time and constantly moving it. On certain mission types, I would totally agree with you though. On like black box missions, probably overtuned then, because you can just keep everything away and nothing can get close. So then you're only afraid of ranged enemies and that's it, which you can probably pick off regularly. It's just like moving and running and gunning. Makes Tertium discharge, I think, a little bit more fair. It's still going to be very high up there, though. Then we move on to Turret Arc, which Turret Arc got buffed heavily in the last patch, which is pretty cool. It's now no longer does friendly fire damage from just walking near it, so you can't be slowed down by it, which is pretty awesome, or at least slowed down as much. You can still take friendly fire damage and be slowed down by actually walking through the electricity. That's not such a huge deal. And it's really cool that Turret Arc got some love. It's still going to be kind of an awkward overclock to use because the electricity itself does slow down bugs quite a bit. It does deal a lot of damage, but it does take setup time and it takes positioning. This works better with multiple turrets. On a good day, I would say this one's like A tier because if you have multiple turrets, it's really easy to set this up. But I'm going to put it B tier. Can we find another one? Okay. It's not. Alright, then we have Stubby's last overclock, which is Turret EM Discharge. And this one got buffed too in the last patch for whatever reason, where now it's much easier to see the actual range of it. You could do that now with Turret Arc as well, which is really awesome. And it no longer has any friendly fire damage on it whatsoever. It still does a lot of damage. It also doesn't have damage drop off either. So no matter how far away you are from the turrets, at least how far the bugs are, you'll still do the same amount of damage. This is really, really strong for any holdout mission. It's really strong on escorts. It's really strong on black boxes. It's really strong on salvage missions. It's just not super strong on any mission where you want to run and gun a lot. And that's why I'm going to put it into S tier and why I don't think it's quite overtuned, but it's very close to being overtuned because it is very, very good. And it could be overtuned on those type of missions where it really excels at. So yeah, high up into S tier for that one. Hope Stubby gets an unstable overclock that doesn't rely on turrets. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool too. Definitely upkeep with the practical time. Yeah. Sabo would say it's good for discharge. Yeah, Sabo it's good on too. Especially for like holding the area next to Haxie. Wish there was an overclock that buffs turret with. That'd be interesting for the shotgun. I wish the shotgun did have an extra overclock so that it has 6 like most of the other weapons. Same thing goes with the Zukovs. Alright, moving on to the Loki, we have Armor Breaking Module. And Armor Breaking Module makes it so once you're fully locked onto a target, you get max armor breaking on the Loki, which is good. That's definitely a bonus. I'm going to put this B tier. It's not one that I use super frequently, but it is just a straight upgrade to the weapon. Our other clean overclock is called Eraser. This makes it so we can have more targets onto an enemy, and we have slightly more ammo than we otherwise would. Another B tier. This one's nice for the Loki, but it's nothing way crazy either. Then we have Seeker Rounds next. Then we have Seeker Rounds, which Seeker Rounds makes it so you basically have wall hacks plus aimbot, but a slower rate of fire. So you have consistent damage across everything, which can be pretty cool. But it does make the Loki feel a little bit awkward at sometimes. It's not super good for killing crowds. It's really good against dreadnoughts, and it's pretty nice for those type of missions. It can also be really good if you have already set up a defense, where you can keep peeking out, lock onto stuff, walk behind walls, and be completely safe as you just keep shooting them. So Seeker Rounds I'm going to put up into A tier. I think it's pretty decent, and it can be good in those roles, but it can be a little bit awkward to use. Then we have Explosive Chemical Rounds, which Explosive Chemical Rounds is really strong. You just build this like a burst fire rifle, and every third shot triggers an explosion, dealing damage to all nearby enemies. This does nerf your ammo, but that doesn't matter because you get so much damage just from every third shot. And this explosion hits multiple enemies, it breaks armor, it fears things. It's really, really good. It's one of the best overclocks in the game, and I would put this one up into our overtuned tier because it is a bit overtuned in a lot of ways. It is very strong. The only, I guess, issue is that you can't stack a bunch of ammo with the Loki, but other than that, so long as you have ammo, it's really good. Then our next overclock is Executioner. Executioner is another really, really good overclock. This one makes it so you have slightly less lock-ons that you can have, as well as you have slightly less ammo overall, which doesn't really matter, but you get 50% more damage whenever you're hitting weak spots with the Loki. That is really strong and kills everything really, really fast. This is another one of the best overclocks for Inji's primary weapons. I don't know if I'd put it into overtune, because honestly I don't think that it is so much, since at least you have to kind of work for it. So it's not as easy as like explosive chemical rounds. I'm going to put it high end of S tier, but it's very high up there. It's definitely better than something like Cycle Overload. Probably better than Turretium Discharge in a lot of cases too. At least towards single targets, Turretium Discharge might be better for crowds. But yeah, very, very good overclock as well. Very high up there. And then our very last one for the Loki is the Neuro Lasso. And this one is a weird overclock. This makes it so for every lock-on that you put on an enemy, you then slow them down by a certain percentage. These lock-ons can't last forever though. They will eventually expire. You don't technically need to shoot this though. This one's actually pretty decent if you put the fear on it, since you can slow things down, fear them away, keep slowing them down. It can be really good in a team setting. And in a team setting, it kind of has a use. In any other like solo setting, it's very awkward though. And solo, I'd say this thing's C tier. Multiplayer, I'd say this thing's B tier. It's fine enough, but very weird. KK, gotta pick up the girlfriend. See you, folks. See you, Cass. Hey, have a great rest of your day. Kinda wish neurotoxin grenades didn't pass through the caretaker. Yeah. I'd love to chunk them with C4, detonate on the explosion. Which weapon do you think has the most fun overclocks? In my opinion, the nade launcher. For the most of them, I can see nade launcher. Like RJ250 super fun, hyper-propellant can be fun for sniping stuff, nukes are fun, just the grenade launcher in general is pretty fun. So yeah, I could see that one. I'm not really sure overall at everything. Like double barrel's pretty good too, because you have like double barrel for just clearing off crowds, jumbo shell's fun for just smacking stuff hard, shape shell's fun for long range, and like special powder's fun for flying around. So I guess it depends on what playstyle you really enjoy over everything else. Alright, then we move on to Inji's secondaries, where first up we do have the grenade launcher, and our very first one is Clean Sweep. This gets you a bigger AoE and more damage on the grenade launcher, which is good. That's a nice bonus to the grenade launcher. I don't think it's super crazy, so I'm going to put this B tier. It's still a solid overclock though. If you like running it, awesome. If you don't like running it, also awesome. You have plenty of other options. Then we've got Pack Rat, which is tied for the Flamethrower's overclock as being the most basic overclock in the game, where you get 2 more rounds for it. That's another B tier. It's nice, but it's not super crazy or anything like that. Then we have composite rounds, or compact rounds. This one makes it so you have even more ammo than you otherwise would with the grenade launcher, but you lose damage on it. This is like another B tier. This one's fine. It's good for clearing up crowds. It's less good against big targets, but the grenade launcher already isn't way great at dealing with big targets compared to its other secondary options, or Inji's other secondary options like the breach cutter and the shard diffractor. It's still fine though if you want to clear up crowds. It's nice. Then we've got RJ250. And this one is a super fun overclock to run around with. You nerf your damage, but now you can bounce yourself and bounce teammates with RJ250. You get a lot more grenades from this. It's still really good at clearing up crowds, because crowds' regular grunts can burn to death thanks to the fire mod on it, so that's pretty good. It doesn't do very well against big single targets though. So you're mostly using this for mobility, and then you're going to use your primary for a lot of single target damage. So I'm going to move RJ up into the S tier. It is very fun. I don't think it's the overtuned one. I don't think it's as overtuned as like Special Powder or as good as Special Powder. Even though, I don't know if I've seen more scouts die from this or more Injis die from this. It's hard to say. Because usually scouts a combination of like Special Powder plus grappling hook fails that end up in deaths. Whereas RJ250 is usually accidentally knocking yourself off of a cliff and then dying. So, maybe. More scouts, definitely. Sometimes I forget RJ250 does damage because it jump around with. Yeah, that's true. It does do damage to you. That is kind of a downside. Then we have Fat Boy. Fat Boy is an awesome overclock that lets you fire out nukes. This is your launcher that you just fire at anything. It blows up. It does tons of damage towards crowds. It's not way great against single targets. You also don't have very many shots with this. Even if you build full ammo with your nukes, you're running out very quickly. So it's kind of awkward to use. You can use it for mining, funny enough, and that's actually not a terrible way to use it in a lot of cases. But you do need a primary weapon that's fairly ammo efficient to run with this. Otherwise, you run through ammo really, really quick with it, or you need like discounted resupplies. If you're doing that, or you find just tons of nitra, then Fat Boy can be really good. Most of the time, you're just going to use this, see a horde, fire it at the horde, delete the horde, continue on. And like, even though this isn't necessarily the most practical, I'm still going to throw it up into the S tier because it's just so much fun to use, and it's so good for the crowd clear. You could probably argue like RJ could potentially clear up the same crowd just as quickly, but it doesn't have the nukes and everything, and the visuals of it is just so much fun. Best use for Fat Boy is single Mactera, single Festerfleet. Yep, exactly. Full ammo is 5 with resupplies gives you. For killing scouts, it's S tier. Yeah. It is probably S tier for that. But then, like, Mole would also be S tier for that. Alright, and then our last overclock for the grenade launcher is hyperpropellant. Which hyperpropellant is pretty cool too. This turns your grenade launcher into a sniper rifle, and this is really strong for taking out big single targets. It's really good for taking out dreadnoughts, really good for taking out detonators, really good for taking out menaces. Anything with a lot of health, you can just point this at it, basically delete it or chunk it out to a lot of damage. This one also converts your damage type, interestingly enough. So if you put fire on this, it actually doesn't nerf your damage. You just get fire on top of this, so you can one-shot turrets with it. This one is basically your sniper rifle for Inji, and on like has 5. Whoop, this one is going right up into S tier. It is also really, really good. It does kind of fall off more if you're playing modded difficulties, because it's just not good for picking off things, and then your primary has to do more work for that. It can be fine if you have like oppressors or praetorians on you, but for just clearing up crowds, it is a little bit awkward. And you can't really build this for like AoE damage. It's only for single target damage, but it does do that single target damage very, very well. The notion of carrying mini nukes alone makes it S tier. Yeah, exactly. We need a separate tier list for overclocks for clearing scouts. Okay. I think the direct damage of hyperpropellant is actually higher than the area damage of Fat Boy. Yeah, it is. You do more damage with it. It's just that you're doing it just to one target. Both these are good, it's just you use them in different roles. This one's for you see a crowd, you delete the crowd. This one's for if you see something big, you delete the big thing. And that's what you use them for. And then you use your primary weapon for everything else. Which if your primary weapon's like explosive chemical rounds, then it works really well for everything else. Alright, then we move on to the breach cutter. And the very first one for the breach cutter is pretty awesome. This is lightweight cases. This gets you more ammo with the breach cutter and a faster reload. Reload doesn't matter, but more ammo for the breach cutter is pretty awesome. Base breach cutter is already super strong. So this one I would also put up into S tier. It's really good. It's one of the best clean overclocks in the game. Even if it is just a basic ammo upgrade, it's for the breach cutter though, which makes so you can delete even more things with it. Really, really good. And then we've got stronger plasma currents. Oh wait, no, we don't. We have roll control next. Then we've got roll control, which got changed recently, and roll control is super, super fun right now. So now roll control can actually be steered wherever you want it to go. It always spins now, but steering it is super fun. You can cut through multiple enemies with this. You can weave it back through hordes. You can put it with like the plasma trail on this, and it can kind of work as a wall of plasma to clear up things like swarmers or jellyfish. That's pretty cool. I like the way that they changed roll control, but I'm gonna put it into B tier. I don't think it's overpowered or anything. It is super, super fun though. I think it's much better than it used to be, where before I still enjoyed it, but this way it's much better. S tier? I don't know if it's S tier. For the spin tier, yeah. Put it in the spin tier. I really enjoy roll control with explosive goodbye. Yeah, that's pretty fun too. A tier in my opinion. I can understand that. Yeah, it's much better than it used to be. Before it was probably one of the weakest overclocks, and it would have been just in C tier because it's just, it's fine. It's fun, but it's just kind of fine. So like B or A tier, I can see as being pretty reasonable for this. Then we've got stronger plasma current. Which stronger plasma current just gets you more damage with the breach cutter and a longer lasting projectile. What the heck? Where did my... Hang on, my things got messed up. Let's see. Where's my... Alright. How did this... Yeah, we do have breach cutter things here. Did it end? Why isn't... Okay, I might have to... Yeah, why does it want to... It goes right back to the minigun. Then we just got minigun overclocks. Okay, I'm going to have to change some things then. Because we still got these other overclocks. Also, why is it changing by itself now? Maybe because we went through the whole thing and now it... Well, it's not the whole thing. Alright, let me fix this real quick. Okay. I'm gonna take the breach cutter and the shard diffractor ones out of here. And then put them in a different folder so that we can start this up. I didn't think there was actually like a limit to this though. I think we just hit the limit on the slideshow thing that we can actually show. I figured it would just let me like keep going as long as I had something in the folders. Alright, so... Oops. Huh. Okay, hang on. Is that... Maybe I need to delete this other one. Okay. This one should be good now. Okay. Save that. I'm also going to have to do the same thing for this in here then. Let's see, there we go. Okay, now we should be back on stubby overclocks. So, let's see, go through stubbies, go through the Lokis. Wait, why is this? Why is it now moving? Just moving it over because I... Alright. That's a little bit awkward. Let's try not moving everything off to the side then. Okay. Okay, there's the grenade launchers. Okay, there we go. Now we're back to the actual ones. Yes. Pray to the machine spirit run, it's the only solution. Yeah, exactly. I don't know, I had this set up for it just to be an image slideshow that I could move around and it was working fine, but I guess we hit the total amount of actual things, which seems to be like 130-ish, and we still have the other like 10 or 12, maybe it's 135 or something, I don't know. Either way, Next, Overclock, stronger plasma current for the breach cutter. This one makes it so every shot from the breach cutter has a better lifetime on it, as well as it deals more damage. That's really nice for the breach cutter. Makes it so you can kill big things even quicker. Breach cutter already kills crowds really nice anyway, so I'm going to put this one A tier. I think it's pretty good. Especially if you want to take it on like Dreadnought mission, then it's really nice. And you can cleave through some pretty big crowds with this. The showcase part is what makes DRG great. So many overclocks, a tier that can't even hold them all. Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's kind of what it is for like Deep Rock. All right, then we've got Return to Sender. Return to Sender is the magic trick overclock where you can fire the breach cutter and then you can recall your breach cutter shot back to you. So you can potentially deal double the amount of damage to enemies, but this also cuts your ammo down by quite a bit. So it's kind of a weird one and not one that I use super often. I'd put this one like B tier. It's pretty good, but only in certain situations. Then we've got High Voltage Crossover, which technically got buffed slightly to where now this doesn't still nerf your overall mag size with the breach cutter, but whenever you hit an enemy, you put electricity on them, and the electricity lingers a little bit longer than it did previously. That's okay. That's fine. It's still not one that I take with the breach cutter super often, so I'd put it B tier. It's decent, but nothing way crazy. Then we've got... looks like we got Spinning Death next. Then we've got Spinning Death. This one got buffed not too long ago too, where you got more ammo with it. What this one does, you fire out a blender from your breach cutter, it spins around, chops everything up, deals damage to everything that walks through it. It can be pretty good in certain situations. It's actually pretty fun to take with like Neuro Lasso, and it's good for cutting off choke points, but it does make it so your breach cutter range is even more limited than it already is. So I'm going to put this one B tier. Can be pretty good. I feel like Spinning Death is really slept on by most people. Over hundreds of hours I've played, barely seen it. I really love that overclock. Yeah, I like running it. I think it's super fun. Blender spin. Yep, spin the blender. It's really good for chopping up stuff. Like I said, in a choke point, especially with lures, it can be really good. Or with Neuro Lasso, where you slow things down as they have to walk through the blender, it can be pretty good. It's just that it's always a little bit awkward because it's like, then you might not have a great ranged option. And it's really awkward using it's like Mac Terra, where usually you have to like kind of jump and fire it and then just hope that they fly through it. And then our last overclock for the breach cutter is Inferno. This makes it so every shot now does less damage, but lights things on fire, which is really good. That actually makes it so you can clear up things really quick. The only downside is this isn't really good against like dreadnoughts, but that's about it. Everything else you'll clear up super quick. And the nerf in damage doesn't matter that much because the fire is going to make up for that really, really fast. So I'm going to put this one actually up into S tier. It's really nice. And then for our final weapon, we've got the Shard Diffractor, where we have efficiency tweaks, which just gets you more ammo for the Shard Diffractor and like no downside for it. It's really nice. Shard Diffractor with this is really good. Shard Diffractor for me already feels like the minigun, so it's really nice just to spray this at enemies, and it works really well against basically any enemy type. Definitely like a good overclock. It's probably A or B tier. I could see people arguing it for either. Then we have the Automated Beam Controller. This one's kind of an awkward one for me. I don't use it that often, and it feels a little bit strange to me, but it's okay. This one makes it so you have more ammo, and you can also recharge this faster. However, once you fire this, you have to keep firing it unless you pickaxe cancel it, which does consume part of the ammo that you were using. And this one is okay if you can keep it on target. If you can keep it during crowds, it can be pretty decent, but it always feels strange to me. I'm going to put this one B tier. Then we have Feedback Loop. Feedback Loop is pretty cool. This one makes it so you have a bigger and bigger laser the more things that you hit, but you have less ammo. So you can spread more damage to more enemies, which can be pretty good. It can do a lot of damage per second then. It's really fun to use, and I would say like Feedback Loop is A tier. It's really good in a lot of situations. And then we have our last balanced overclock, which is our Volatile Impact Reactor, which makes it so you can put a laser, well, anywhere that you want, and it basically puts sticky fuel on the ground. That's really good. The fire buildup from this is really nice. It's really good for crowd control. The downside for it is not really that big of a deal. You lose out on charge capacity and radius, but that hardly matters for the Shard Diffractor. So this one's actually going to go all the way up into our overtuned tier. I think it's actually really, really good. It clears up crowds very well. You don't even need to be super accurate with it. Just kind of sweep it across the area and have things run through it, and they'll light themselves on fire and do the work for you. So really nice for the shard diffractor. Then we have, well, do we have this one? Oh no. Then we have the Plascrete Catalyst. This one is super fun. You shoot your platforms with this. After so long, it will cause your platform to explode. It deals really high damage to everything around it. It's really good for clearing up crowds. It's really good for single target damage too. It clears up like the Omen Tower surprisingly fast since you can hit everything and the explosion radius is a bit bigger than what it looks like. It's really nice. It's probably like a solid A tier. It's really good. Although it is a little bit awkward because you do have to set it all up to get it to work. And you have to make sure there's nothing in your line of sight when you're hitting the platform so that you can explode it. And then for our final overclock, we have Overdrive Booster. I want to say overtuned something or another, but Overdrive Booster is our final overclock for the Shard Diffractor. This one doesn't actually come with any sort of downsides because its upside is whenever you push reload while firing this, then it turns on the Overdrive Booster. This makes so you deal even more damage. However, you're locked in place and this does consume all of your ammo from firing the gun. At least that's currently in the gun, not all of your extra ammo too. If you cancel with the pickaxe cancel, it does consume part of that ammo too, so you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you're in a good spot to use this. And this one's just a solid all-around overclock. It is very good for the Shard Diffractor. I'd actually put this one up into S tier. It's really, really nice for clearing up dreadnoughts, really good for clearing up big enemies. Can be good for clearing up crowds too. It's not really like much of a downside. You can also mine with Plascrete. You can mine with Plascrete to some extent. It's not way great, but you can do it. And that is all the overclocks that we got for Deep Rock Galactic in their new updated part. I think I'm pretty happy with where all of these are. Basically every overclock in Deep Rock though is very viable at the moment. There's only a couple that are kind of weaker or that I find kind of awkward. And even these ones you can still get away with on like Has 5. I have plenty of videos up on the channel of me running through challenges using like any of these overclocks and them working just fine. So you also don't even need overclocks to be playing on Has 5. Once you start getting into like modded difficulties, if you start doing that, then some of these would probably change, and then it just becomes what's the most value per shot that I can get out of the weapon with it still having reasonable stats on it. And then things would be moved around a little bit more, but I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out. Can you clear the slideshow so we can see the whole list? Yes, I can. Let me see. There we go. That is a good point. All right. So I guess we can just run down these two for the end. Why not? Exploding platforms is really good for clearing up teammates. Yeah, it can be good for that. Yeah, starting at the top, we've got some of the stronger ones where we've got Neurotoxin Payload because it's pretty crazy for clearing up crowds. Mine Layer System because it's crazy for crowds. Volatile Bullets because it can 1 or 2 or 3 shot basically anything in the game that you can light on fire. Hellfire because it's great for crowds. Special Powder because it lets you fling yourself around and you can get anywhere in a big cave. Explosive Chemical Rounds because you clear up crowds really easy and it clears up big things really quick. Volatile Impact Reactor because it clears up crowds. Then we've got all the S tiers like Burning Hell, Lead Storm, Plasma Burster Missiles, Magic Bullets, Lead Spray, Mole, AI Stability Engine, Hipster, Thermal Exhaust Feedback, Jumbo Shells, Double Barrel, Embedded Detonators, Cryobolt, Firebolt, Sticky Fuel, Volatile Impact, Disperser Compound, Energy Rerouting, Persistent Plasma, Cycle Overload, Tertium Discharge, Executioner, RJ250, Fat Boy, Hyper Propellant, Lightweight Cases, Inferno, Overdrive Booster. And then we've got like A tier, which are all solid overclocks, including Bullet Hell, Little More Oomph, Exhaust Vectoring, Splintering Shells, Big Bertha, Overtuned Feed Mechanism, Fragmentation Missiles, Jet Fuel Homebrew, Salvo Module, Rocket Barrage, 6-shooter, Elephant Rounds, Composite Casings, Compact Mags, Experimental Rounds, Electro Minelets, Backfeeding Module, Triple Tech Chambers, Overclocked Firing Mechanism, Bullets of Mercy, Minimal Clips, Active Stability Engine, Active Stability System, Aggressive Venting, Impact Deflection, Overtuned Particle Accelerator, Shaped Shells, Cryo Minelets, Gas Recycling, The Specialist, Bodkin Points, Trifork Volley, Compact Feed Valves, Fuel Stream Diffuser, Improved Thermal Efficiency, Ice Spear, Ice Storm, Snowball, Sludge Blast, Explosive Reload, Heavy Hitter, Mega Power Supply, Blistering Necrosis, Stunner, Lightweight Magazines, Magnetic Pellet Alignment, EM Refire Booster, Seeker Rounds, Stronger Plasma Current, Feedback Loop, and Plascrete Catalyst. Then we have all the B tiers, which are decent options, but mostly clean overclocks and balanced overclocks that kind of change some things around. And then we've got the C tiers, which could use some improvement, like Chain Hit, Full Chamber Seal, Micro Flechettes, Reatomizer, Shield Battery Booster, Flow Rate Expansion, chain hits, homebrew powder, tranquilizer rounds, magnetic cooling units, super focus lens, and then mini shells. So there's a lot of stuff there. There is a lot of things there, and most of them are really good though. Most of them are really, really nice. Fat Boy's an S tier pick I wasn't expecting. It's really good for clearing up crowds. And again, I am more focusing this towards like has 5 difficulty rather than necessarily modded difficulty. And it has 5, they can be really good. Because there's a big crowd that spawns, you fire Fat Boy at it, you don't think about that, or you have your turrets deal with whatever is remaining, and then you turn your attention somewhere else. And that's basically like the most efficient way to use like Fat Boy. I can understand people not liking it for a similar reason though, and it certainly wouldn't be as good as like Volatile Impact Reactor, because you just can use it more often against more things, but totally depends. This is all my personal tier list as well, so feel free to absolutely disagree with me on anything or everything, and feel free to agree with me on anything that you want. I don't really care. The majority of builds in Deep Rock are totally viable on basically every difficulty, which is really cool. It's a real testament to the game, because this is not like when I did my killing floor tier list, where it's like certain weapons are just flat out way worse than other weapons. They just are. Like both objectively and, well, I guess just subjectively and objectively. Just like when you're using them, it's like, yeah, this weapon has less ammo, less rate of fire, less damage, less range than this other weapon. And maybe it doesn't even feel that good, or maybe it has worse sights. Yeah, and it mines have massive damage bonus. It's actually hidden in the game. Yeah, that's true. You can mine with Fat Boy too, which is kind of cool. It can be useful, which is like, we need a little bit more nitro. There's nitro up in the ceiling. Fire Fat Boy up there. Yeah, even the overclocks that aren't the greatest are at least fun to try out. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like, some of these are just kind of boring ones. Like, I don't like full chamber seal because I feel like it should have more stuff. But then other ones where it's like, reatomizer's fun. It's just, it's very awkward to use and not really that great. And like magnetic cooling unit, we talked about this for the EPC, where it's like, it's really strong. And it's really good for like training wheels to learn how to EPC mine. It's just once you get EPC mining down, I would say it's the worst one for the EPC, just because every other overclock can kind of do that better, or do its job better. Or it's like heavy hitter is better for single, just shooting normally. And like persistent plasma is better for crowd control. I saw a video of people using Reatomizer to Steveify a detonator. Is that actually a thing? It was a thing. The Reatomizer was bugged twice, where you could have status effects like that. You could actually make Steve into an elite version of himself too, if you shot a elite enemy and put that status effect on Steve. It's no longer in the game though. That did get changed. Was that also with, I don't remember if it was just Ebonite Glyphids you could also do the same thing with, or if it was just where you could get an Ebonite Steve, which made Steve just invulnerable. He couldn't die. Which was also kind of overpowered, but that one got taken out of the game too. I don't remember if that was with Beastmaster being a problem, or if that was with Reatomizer being a problem. I don't remember which bug it was. Rip hilarious Reatomizer, yeah. Although when you made Steve into an elite version of himself, you could potentially do that to more bugs, so you could actually potentially make it worse for yourself. Like, you could shoot through an elite enemy and hit multiple enemies and turn them into elites as well. So it went both ways. It could be really cool, but it could be really buggy. So I don't think there's anything else that I really have planned to go over here. This was super fun though, to do the tier list live, and thanks everybody for being here. I really do appreciate it. Thanks everybody for your input as well. That is really cool. Maybe we can do more of these in the future. I do want to do a tier list live for the charity stream, but just have it be like anybody can donate, and then we'll do whatever the heck tier list that they want to do. Just I wanted to do one specifically for the Deep Rock Overclock, since this one has been requested. Every time there's a new update for Deep Rock, this one gets requested a bunch. But I wanted to wait until like the maintenance update came out and I got time to test it before I actually made another one of these. You can give them the damage resist of Steve also. Yeah, that's true. Thank you for the update, Ron. Well, thanks for being here. Do appreciate it. Now for the beard tier list. Unfortunately, I would have to make that one because I don't think there is a Deep Rock beard tier list. I could look and see, but I kind of doubt it. See if there is anything that comes up with that. Nice list, man. Looking forward to the edited video. Yeah, the edited video should be much shorter because this is already like a 3-hour stream. I'm imagining the video is probably going to be like an hour and a half. Yeah, I'm not seeing a beard list. We've got like crystal and mineral tier list. Oh, okay. Yeah, we've got that, like objectives, tools, weapons, enemies, more creatures, enemy priority. So there's still plenty of other things here, but then there's like a ton of tier lists on here for basically anything. Beer tier list. I've done that one. I might do an update for that one at some point since we do have like the randomizer and I didn't do it when that was around. Thank you for the stream, Ron. It was great tuning in. Well, thanks for being here. Do appreciate it. Dark Morkite right into F tier. It can be. That one's probably the least impactful of the daily beers. Although it still is useful on like a deep dive. It's better than nothing. Assuming that you don't know ahead of time that there's no Morkite. I swear I seen a beard one when I was checking a while ago. Hey, yeah, there could be one here. Because I mean, there's a lot. So I don't know. D tier on Azure Weld. What's your Jetty boot high score? Like 25, 27, something like that. Not very high. I don't even think I'm on my own high score in Jetty boot, like at all. I think other people have gotten higher. All right, well, I think we're gonna leave off the stream right here. Thanks everybody for being here today for this awesome tier list and slideshow and everything. We'll be doing an updated video for it. It's gonna be including a lot of this, more editing and stuff. And that should be out in a couple of days. So if you missed it here or you don't want to go through the entirety of the stream, there should be a list there. I'm going to try to put in timestamps and everything so people can just jump to the parts that they actually want to see. And yeah, thanks everybody for being here. We appreciate it. Oh, thank you for the follow too. And yeah, next time we're going to be streaming should be on Wednesday. Unless I decide to do a late night stream of something. Not sure what we're going to be streaming then, but we'll have something. Maybe we'll do some more Dark Tide, some more Vermintide, because those have been really fun recently. Of course, we're going to have Deep Rock on Thursday, and maybe another tier list like this next week, but maybe I'll do a video for people to submit whatever tier list they want me to do for like the charity donations. And again, we're going to be doing the St. Jude's charity stream for the entirety of the month, so if anybody would like to donate to it, you can. I'm also going to move my... Whoop. Not that. Move my camera over just a little bit. That way I'm not blocking off stuff at the very bottom. Alright, you guys take care. Have a great rest of your day. And I will catch you guys later. Bye-bye, everybody. Take care.